think initially we were a little bit anxious ourselves about going to panel. It sounded quite scary, but it wasn't at all. It was just a really friendly chit chat with a group of people around a table. It was more of a celebration really of us being there and of us, wanting to become foster carers. The County Council offer a fair rate of pay, so we get paid dependent on our level of experience. So after you've done it for a while, then your level of pay will go up based on your experience and level of training that you've done. We've also got a network hub, which is a foster carer support group, and it's just an informal get-together. We feel so valued as a foster carer for Nottinghamshire County Council. Everyone's so caring and wants what's best for you as a family. The matching process is really careful, so they listen to our needs and, they would never think of placing a child that wouldn't fit in our environment. As a foster family, we try and just make it everyday, normal life, try and bring some stability and love to that child that's staying with us and give them experiences that perhaps they've not experienced before. We love going out on day trips together, and for example today we've come pony trekking. Nottinghamshire's a great place to foster because we've got so much on our doorstep, there's so much that we can do. I feel really lucky that we're able to foster here.
I'm Marion Wardill. I'm married to John, who's got progressive MS. He was diagnosed when he was 32, and we managed quite well until about 17 years ago when we needed to have home care. Involvement in co-production means that we, as the people who use the service, are going to be listened to and contribute to the care that we receive. We won't get the good care unless we can advise, challenge, inform and support what those who are trying to do a good job want to deliver. We need to invite people to come and have their voice. And if they haven't got the courage to be a part of a regular group, to be ready at the end of the phone to say how they're doing. I think that communication is 100% of the job. It is in every job. Personal relationships depend on good communication, and there's no more personal relationship than being a carer. All in all, we've tried to be good representatives of those who haven't got a voice. That's my passion, is that there are an awful lot of people who haven't got my sort of background and confidence to express their concerns about the care, and who aren't readily accessed by care agencies for their views. We do need to keep on, as a body, letting people know that we exist as a group who are going to be involved in co-production. We're going to be involved in scrutinising initiatives from the council for involvement of people with lived experience, be they people like Eddie with learning disability, or Dean with a physical and cerebral palsy difficulty. All those people, they're not just labels, they're people who need individualised, attentive, sensitive care.
The Send Local Offer is a website containing information and support for children and young people aged 0 to 25 within the Nottinghamshire area who have special educational needs or disabilities.
The Local Offer is like a hub of all information, everything put together on one page. It's really useful for special educational needs, and it's Nottinghamshire and surrounding counties, so even if you're bordering on a county, you can still find useful information.
You can use the Local Offer on any device with internet access. You can use it on your phone or tablet. You can also use it on your laptop too.
It's really easy to access it at home through the internet, which is what I do. But if you can't access it through the internet at home for any reason, you can either go down to your local library and access it there, or if you can't get to the local library, you can telephone the Nottinghamshire County Council Customer Service Department on 0300 500 80 80.
You can find out by going on your favourite search engine. I type in Nottinghamshire Local Offer.
There's absolutely loads of information. There's health, education, social care, clubs, transport. It's all there.
You might want to use the Local Offer to see how you can get some extra support for your child at school, apply for a short break, or just simply see what clubs or activities are available in the local area. Even if you don't know what you're looking for, it's worth just having a look on there because there's so much information available.
We've used the Local Offer quite a lot over the years. It's been really useful for the girls.
When we needed to apply for an educational healthcare plan for our son, we went online and looked at the Local Offer, so we understood the process from start to finish and what steps we needed to take.
The Local Offer website has an area called the Young People Zone. It has been designed to help people with disability in Nottinghamshire.
You can find lots of useful information on the youth zone for young people. For example, health, education, finding a job and hobbies and interests. I have used the Young People's website to look for different jobs that are interesting.
And look for all kinds of things. Entertainment, job interviews, places where you go out near your area.
I use the website to look for things to do with my hobbies, such as performing arts activities and areas where I can voice my opinion.
The Send Local Offer is updated all the time, so it's worth checking in on there and seeing if there's any new services or support that may be available to you.
As a member of the Parent Carer Forum, We work with the local offer and the county council and other agencies. We offer advice from a parent-carer viewpoint to ensure that our children and young people have the best available to them.
Because we are the ones who are using the website, it is important we are involved so we can say what we do right and what we don't right.
We have met with the council and the futures to give our feedback on the Young People's Zones website to see if we like it and if it's suitable for others.
I think it's really important for parents and the local authority to work together, because by working together we ensure that our voices are heard and that we get a local offer that works for us. I'd really recommend the local offer. There's lots of information all in one place, so from the one website you can find out information from voluntary groups, statutory bodies. There's just lots of information to help you and your children.
If you are a young person with special educational needs or disabilities living in Nottinghamshire, I would say give the Young People's Zone a try.
There is lots of information and you can get involved by sending an article, a blog or a vlog.
I think the local offer is a really useful resource for parents and carers living within Nottinghamshire. It's a comprehensive hub of information, and I found out about support and services that I wouldn't have otherwise known about.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the chairman.
I will remind you that we have just 15 minutes left of the question time allocation, so I doubt whether we're going to get through the remaining questions. There are also 4 motions to debate, so we'll see how we go when we get to the agenda item. Right, moving swiftly on then. Question 7 from Councillor Tom Hollis about the cost of delays to the Fairer Funding Review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much does the Chairman of the Finance Committee estimate that the delays to the Government's Fair Funding Review, due to be published in 2019, has cost Nottinghamshire County Council? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Excuse me, Councillor Richard Jackson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I thank Councillor Hollis for his question? In my presentations to council budget meetings for the past couple of years, I've referred to the Government's Fair Funding Review and to the fact that this council has participated constructively in the whole process. We've provided narrative and data-based responses to various consultations and technical papers as we look to ensure that this authority and the East Midlands in general will receive a better deal in the future than was the case under local government funding formulas of the past. It's therefore frustrating that we're still awaiting the outcome of the Fair Funding Review. However, not for the only time today. I think we must acknowledge that the COVID pandemic has disrupted the plans and timetables of both central and local government. I'm sure that it's been a factor in delaying work on this issue. I agree that we need clarity on the future of local government funding as soon as possible in view of comments last week by the Minister of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, Kemi Badenoch, who suggested that councils will not receive a multi-year funding settlements until the Fair Funding Review is completed and the local government funding formula has been duly updated. Now, we know from past experience that the sooner we can return to receiving multi-year funding settlements, the more confidence we can have in our own medium-term financial strategy based on firm guarantees of future funding levels. However, I don't necessarily accept Councillor Hollis's assertion that the delay to the Fair Funding Review has come at a cost to this council. It is true that the pandemic has had an unprecedented impact on the County Council's finances. Additional costs and lost income directly associated with the crisis in the current and the previous financial years are forecast to be approximately £138 million. However, the one-year settlements received by the County Council for the current year and for the next financial year, notwithstanding additional COVID-specific emergency grants, have been on the positive side, of the assumptions that we were previously making in our medium-term financial strategy. I could argue, therefore, Mr. Chairman, that the delay to the Fair Funding Review has worked for us in the short term, with government assessing need on a more short-term annual basis. Only when the Fair Funding Review is concluded will we know exactly how beneficial it will be to this and to other similar authorities compared with previous settlements. But I agree with Councillor Hollis that the sooner we find that out, the better placed we will be to plan for the medium and the longer term. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hollis?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I think those answers are about as believable as Mr. Johnson in Parliament yesterday. We've been talking about the Fair Funding Review since 2019. Counties like Nottinghamshire, the lowest
question, please, Councillor Hollis.
I'm coming to it, Mr. Chairman, very briefly. Counties like Nottinghamshire, the lowest funded upper tier types, receiving just £153 per person for local services, 52% less than Metropolitan.
Councillor, you're still making a statement. Could you please get to your question?
Chairman,
we're short of time, and I would like to get as many questions answered as I possibly can.
Now. I'm halfway through what I've prepared to read. And despite counties spending close than half the budgets on adult social care, county areas receive 65% less per person for over 65s. Would the Chairman agree with me that residents of this county are being hit hard in the pocket because of government's failure to install a fair funding system for local government funding? Nottinghamshire's losing out, Mr. Chairman. It isn't what Councillor Jackson just referred to as not affecting Nottinghamshire. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just struggling to find the question in that little statement. Not for the first time, Councillor Hollis has accused me of lying in this chamber, wrongly accused me of lying in this chamber. I'll do something about it. We've had one of the highest additional funding settlements in the country. I think we're 5th, 6th highest in the country. So what we are saying to government, as I said in my fuller answer to the original question, the lobbying, the work that's going on behind the scenes from the leader, from the chief executive, from the 151 officer, from myself, from various other colleagues, including the deputy leader, through the county council's network, is having effect. We're being listened to. I am not surprised that the fair funding review has been delayed. Frankly, I think we would all prefer government for the last couple of years to be concentrating on fighting the pandemic, getting us through that, than trying to look at, half-heartedly, a fairer funding review. We're moving away now to the next phase, and I think the fair funding review is on the cards. It is coming over the horizon, and I'm confident from the work that we're all doing that we're being listened to. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Bethanetti regarding workforce resilience.
Thank you, Chairman. In the last few months, the pandemic has taken another twist with the arrival of the Omicron variant. Colleagues in the care sector and other key workers have had to respond to the rapid rise in infections, which in turn has put significant additional pressure on our services during a time when they are already likely to be at peak activity. Could the Chairman of the Adult Social Care and Public Health Committee please provide an update on our workforce resilience and how the department has adapted to the increase in demand and staffing shortages over the winter period?
Thank you, Councillor Boyd-Elliott, to answer.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Eddy, for raising the question with me. You're absolutely right. Even without the challenges posed by COVID-19, winter is already the most challenging time for adult social care and health staff. During this period, they face the usual seasonal increases in requests for support, be this down to cold weather, seasonal illnesses, or poorer mental health. These all adversely affect the health and well-being of our residents during the winter months. Hospital admissions also tend to be higher. We work hard to ensure that those who are leaving hospital are able to do so safely. There is also an increased need to support people in our community and in their homes. As this chamber knows, this year we are faced with the additional pressures of Omicron variant of COVID, which at its peak has caused significant difficulty for our staff and their ability to support residents. Being vaccinated and having the booster does give our staff and the public great protection against serious illness from COVID. But it does not necessarily stop people from feeling unwell. And for those who would usually spend their time giving care and support directly to people face to face, it is not possible to work through the self-isolation period, even if they felt well enough to do so. This has meant that many of our staff and those who work in our public health or social care commission services have been absent from work. We have seen many of our care settings experience significant service disruption through outbreaks. Nevertheless, our staff have stepped up to this challenge in a number of ways. Many of them who work in our day services and our maximising independence service have worked extra hours, often at weekends, to support other services who had significant staff absence. I would like to personally thank them for their continued hard work. Our management team have been amazing. They work intensively before Christmas, putting into place contingency plans so we were well prepared to support any resident who found themselves without support at the risky time of the bank holiday weekends over Christmas. Our quality and market management team worked with our social care providers to make emergency plans and to ensure we maximised the additional grants that we have received from government in December to the best effect. Omicron, we believe, has peaked, but we expect the pressures to remain severely challenging throughout this month. We will keep many of our emergency measures in place now, but I feel confident that although this has been a very tough time, staff are doing all they can, in many cases going over and above the call of duty to ensure our core service and maintain keeping our residents safe and well. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Eddy? Thank you. I think we've time for one more question. Councillor Carr, about recycling centres in Nottinghamshire.
Yeah, that's what I've got to do. Thank you, Chairman. This question to the Chairman of the Transport and Environment Committee. In the last Transport and Environment Committee on the 5th of January, this Council committed to spend £50,000 to carry out a recycling centre strategic review. Within the document, many operational problems are highlighted, specifically at our recycling centres in Beeston, Mansfield, West Bridgford. Will the Chairman commit to keeping all 12 recycling centres open in their current locations, and does he accept that the failure to include the proposed recycling centre near Cockgrave in Rushcliffe breaks the Conservative Party manifesto commitment made on multiple occasions?
Councillor Neil Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. And indeed, at that Transport and Environment Committee meeting on the 5th of January, that review was undertaken, and that's been driven by the new National Resources and Waste Strategy, which is part of the recently introduced Environment Act. And that will have significant implications for how domestic waste is collected, disposed of, and indeed recycled in the future. New legislation will fundamentally change the type and amount of waste collected at the curbside through those recycling centres. This is very timely to have this review in view of the amount of new housing that is coming on stream around the county. It varies from district to district, but some districts are having substantial additional housing around the county. And time has moved on from 4 to 8 years ago. Methods in technology change, that is methods in recycling, etc. change. And we need to respond to those changes in technology and efficiency, and to change in the way products and waste is either reused, recycled, or disposed of. So the commitment I can make is that the intent of the review is to strengthen our recycling centre provision, not to weaken or reduce it, and to drive up those recycling rates across the county, because there's an enormous disparity in recycling rates from district to district. We will also continue to look at the very best value for the taxpayer through this service, with the County Council currently reassessing its priorities to ensure best use of the capital funding available to us. So I can't commit to keep all the centres open, because maybe we might want to have some more, or maybe the review might say, well, let's close that one and build a bigger, more expansive supercentre. We don't know that. That's the purpose of the review. So I'm not prejudging what the review is going to say. Let's wait, and once the strategic review is complete and the requirements and the impacts of the Environment Act become clear, because we're not even sure of that yet, Mr. Chairman, further proposals to improve recycling in the county will be brought forward for members to debate and consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Carr?
Yes, very briefly. There's a lot of this going on at the moment. I'm not going to commit until the review or the report comes out. I'm not asking you to sign a letter. I'll put it a bit more direct then. Do you foresee that there will be a recycling centre in the south of Broxtowe?
Sorry, Chairman, in the south, what was the last? In the south of Broxtowe. I refer to the answer I gave a few moments ago, Mr. Chairman. Where have we heard that before? Because for the same reasons, I can't give a commitment for anywhere, because until we find out what's the most efficient, and maybe in the south of Broxtowe, it might be better to have a bigger, more expansive supercentre. I don't know. I'm not going to second guess. Let's establish where we are and what the latest factors are, not least what the Environment Bill is actually going to come out with. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. That concludes the question time session. in accordance with the Constitution. The remaining 4 questions will receive written responses. Moving on then to notice of motions, and can I remind us that we have 3 hours 10 minutes left, so the ball is in your court as to how many motions we actually get through, and I call the first proposer, Councillor Penny Gowland.
Thank you. And in the interest of speed, I won't read out the motion as you all have it available, but I think this is a no-brainer, and I think everybody here is going to agree about this. There are multiple reasons to reduce speed in residential areas. First of all, speed kills. Speed is a relatively small cause of accidents, but if an accident happens and somebody's going fast, they're much more likely to injure somebody or kill them. I'm sure most people here know if you hit someone at 30 miles an hour, there's a 20% chance they'll be killed. If you hit them at 20 miles an hour, there's a 2.5% chance they'll be killed. The county has a target of reducing casualties by 40% by 2030. This is a concrete way to achieve that. But speeding traffic causes lots of other problems, particularly in residential areas. Many of us in this room remember playing out as a child, but how many of our children and grandchildren have experienced that freedom? We know fear of accidents traps people in their homes, reduces socialisation and reduces physical activity. 30% of Year 6 children in Nottinghamshire in 2018 were overweight, and this has probably only got worse. We need to give children the opportunity to get the activity they need to live healthy social lives. We also know it's a problem for the environment. Speed increases pollution. We all know, I'm sure most of us know, that if you're driving down the M42 to Birmingham, the best speed to be going at is probably about 50 miles an hour. That's a completely different matter to driving in residential areas where you're stopping and starting, accelerating, decelerating, producing exhaust fumes and brake and tyre particles. I wiped this cloth along one of the railings outside here this morning. That black is the stuff you know from touching railings you get on your hands. That's from brake pads, tyres, from you braking and accelerating at the lights. We know this muck, these microparticles, ends up in our lungs, our bloodstream, even in the placentas of unborn babies or mothers of unborn babies. And we know the most disadvantaged residents live with the worst pollution. This pollution leads to death in the long run. But speed limits aren't enough. 60% of vehicles exceed the speed limit in 30-mile-an-hour limits. The police in my area are doing a great job trying to enforce speed limits at the moment, but it's not enough. We also need to design roads with people and speed in mind, putting in road narrowing, trees and so on to reduce the line of sight. Fast cars are very invasive. We notice them on the road. Fast drivers can be equally loud in social media and on the internet. But being a councillor has shown me that actually the vast majority of people are sensible and thoughtful. Most people want speed limits enforced and want it to be easy for them to obey them. We know that in residential areas, high speed only takes you faster to the next junction. It rarely reduces your overall journey time. Everybody is a pedestrian at some time. 20 is plenty. I'm really grateful this has got cross-party support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garland. Call upon Councillor Neil Clark to second the motion.
Thank you, Chairman, and I will speak now. I won't reserve the right because, as Councillor Garland has indicated, I think this is generally a cross-party agreement because road safety, belongs to us all. So I'm happy to second this motion, which obviously was delayed from the original back in July, and this will task the Transport and Environment Committee with exploring the feasibility of implementing a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit and any other new measures that could help improve road safety in all of our residential conurbations. I must emphasise the word feasibility is a key word in the motion. The Council has not been asked to conclude today and implement and decide whether this is a good or a bad idea. We are simply agreeing that the Transport and Environment Committee should examine 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and any other road safety proposals that may have merit. And in so doing, we need to look very carefully at the full range of evidence, both in support of and opposing any changes, where such measures may or may not be suitable and practical, given that different conurbations have different characteristics and needs, how much any such measures might cost the taxpayer to implement and maintain, the enforceability and the credibility of any such proposals, bearing in mind the pressures on this authority. And of course, we very much need to take into account the opinion and support of the public, be they vehicle users or pedestrians, because we need broad public consensus for any such measures to be effective. And we need to consult with the police as well. So we established the Council's Cross-Party Highways Review Panel, which I believe we've already talked about earlier on in the meeting, Mr. Chairman. And part of the recommendations were to include the matters of road safety. So I'm very happy to second this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Hollis, you indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. The independent group would like to offer an amendment to the proposal, which I believe Democratic Services have, but in the benefit of time as well, I'll just read it out. So to simply add, this council acknowledges that enforcement of speed restrictions is poor across Nottinghamshire. This council notes that policing is stretched in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, with 136 less police offences than in 2010, police officers than in 2010. We therefore call for a letter to be sent to Chief Constable Craig Guilford requesting that more resources be allocated to enforcing traffic restrictions across Nottinghamshire, a move this council believes will save lives. Come on, do I speak now? Or?
Yeah, let's just let people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Martin, thank you.
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak, Chair.
Councillor Lawton.
Councillor Lawton.
Mr. Chairman, we'd like a 10-minute adjournment, if we may, to consider the amendment.
Yep, I presume the proposer would like to adjourn as well to consider the amendment.
Thank you.
Councillor Hollis and Councillor Martin did propose and second the motion, but they didn't move the motion. So Councillor Hollis has a right to speak to his amendment, and Councillor Martin, having reserved the right to speak, will also be allowed to speak at any time during the debate that he so chooses.
Thank you, Chair. And I think just before I go on to what I wanted to say, obviously the 25th of November has been a hell of a long time ago. And, you know, I think it'd be really great if this council could resolve to finish the business of meetings before we close. Our social care staff don't go to somebody's house and clock off at 5 o'clock. They finish the job and then leave. I think we could do the same as members. And for a big issue like road safety, waiting 3 months to talk about it isn't exactly ideal. But our purpose for bringing this amendment is really to add a bit of substance to it. You'll note that we didn't take a single word out, only to add something. And I think in the spirit of cross-party, which it's already been described of, the independent alliance councillors make up a large proportion of this council. And I think it's only right that maybe all three groups have a say in what's being put into these cross-party motions. And certainly with regards to enforcement, it's a big issue. And I think, unlike, anyway, I've been on here since 2013, and the history of 20-mile-an-hour enforcements, of course, came from the Labour Party. The Labour group put forward a proposal to roll out 20 miles per hour outside schools. That was then slightly watered down with the fact that we then put advisory speed limits. And this is one of the purposes between having some enforcement and some clout. And actually, when Councillor Gowland spoke, I was filled with quite a lot of enthusiasm. You know, I've been lucky enough to sit next to Councillor Gowland on the Transport Committee, and she speaks with a lot of passion, a lot of research, a lot of knowledge. And I think even coming something with like the cloth to represent to us actually the point she was making, to me, is exactly what something like this motion's about. But then when Councillor Clark stands up, you feel like he's just poured you a glass of orange juice or orange dilute, and then put that much water in. It's diluted it that much you don't even know what you originally began with. I mean, he spoke about some of the problems and the finances. He basically completely spoke against the very principle we were trying to achieve here. You know, we either want to have a commitment to rolling out 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and having a passion to do it, or not. You know, I mean, like I say, Councillor Clark, don't ever make me a drink because, like I say, you've watered the taste out of us mouths by the time you finish speaking. Yeah. But we are passionate, and I really hope that members choose to accept this in the spirit that it's written, because we do want safety. We do want to think about the environmental issues, as Councillor Gowland said quite eloquently. It's not just about road safety. It is about the kind of fumes, the toxins, and all things that are going off in the residential areas. And I think to spend money like this council has in the past on advisory speed limits just clearly hasn't worked. And actually having some clout and asking the police as our partners in road safety to do something about it. So I really hope members of the council choose to accept the Independent Alliance in the good faith that it's written, so we can continue to work on what I see as a relatively apolitical cross-party, what is road safety on our streets of Nottinghamshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Wilmot. No. Oh, sorry, I'm forgetting. Yeah, we've got Councillor Gowland. Are you prepared to accept this amendment? No. Now we'll carry on then. So, Councillor Wilmot, you indicated you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. And as you say, I'm speaking to the amendment. And the Conservative group does not accept this amended version. It's a complete distraction from the main spirit of the original motion, which Councillor Garland has moved. To start talking about policing and the number of police officers and sending letters to the Chief Constable, etc., etc., that's utterly distracting from the important message that we are trying to debate in terms of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and the feasibility of those. So to introduce police officers, etc., the place to do that is the Police and Crime Panel, Mr. Chairman. And I'm sure that the independents will be avidly attending the Police and Crime Panel in order to challenge the Police and Crime Commissioner on the matters of numbers of police officers. This chamber is not the place to debate the numbers of police officers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise speaking to the amendments and unfortunately not supporting it because I can understand where they're coming from, but it's a completely different amendment. It doesn't address the actual 20-mile speed limit. I was going to speak on the main motion, but I'll not bother now on the main when it comes through because it's the same point I was going to make on the feasibility. And just to actually point out the feasibility, and Parkdale Road, which starts in the city, in Nottingham City, because we're right on the border, lots of people know Carn West, and it carries on into my patch, and the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit carries on into my patch. Not advisory, compulsory. Carries on to onto Southdale Road, which is the same road, just changed its name. Carries on as 20 mile an hour still. And the police have been enforcing that very strictly over the last year. There's been several people, actually, well, I think about 7 or 8 have actually been taken to court, and 20 or more have actually been had words with because of, exceeding the speed limit. So on the feasibility issue, which is what I was going to bring up, it is more than possible to do it in the county. In my patch, it is literally being done and enforced. And just for those, it's a nice red round, the red symbol round the 20, actually enforceable, and the police are enforcing it. So the actual words about weak around the county, I don't know. I'd have to be proved that. All I know is that they're quite actually strong in Gedling area in actually enforcing speed limits. But I see where it's coming from, but it's a completely different motion about a completely different thing. So 100% support the 20-mile speed limit. It would help me in the what I brought up earlier on my petition. If Westdale Lane was 20 mile an hour, that would be brilliant. It would solve half the problems. We probably wouldn't need the crossing, etc., etc. So there's many reasons for having it, both for safety, it stops congestion with people piling up, and there's already been said stopping and starting. So I can't support it. I see where they're coming from, but it's the wrong place to put it. If they put it as a separate motion, we could have debated, could have altered it, and it might have got through in some ways, but I can't literally criticise the police at the moment, because in Gedling, I know they're doing a bloody good job. Pardon my language, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not a question of whether the police are doing a good job or not, it's a question whether there's enough of them to do the job. I don't think any of us in the Independence Alliance would criticise the police for the job that they're doing. But also, I also live on the boundaries of the city and the county. My experience of a 20 mile an hour speed limit is in the Wollerton area, where it is not enforced at all. What is the point in having a speed limit if it's not enforced? Because people just do whatever speed they want. At least the 20 mile an hour advisory means that if somebody does get into an accident and it can be shown that they were doing 30 or more, the 20 mile an hour is taken into account. But that's after the horse has bolted, isn't it? You've shut the gate. What we're trying to do is prevent accidents from happening in the first place. And this is actually meant as a helpful amendment. It's actually saying, yes, we want these 20 mile an hour speed limits, although it's not at all certain from Councillor Clark's response whether we're going to get them or not, because we're going to have a feasibility study, and there seems to be that many hurdles that I think an Olympic hurdler would struggle to actually get over them. But this is meant to be helpful. It's meant to be saying, yes, we want them, but what on earth is the point in having them if they're not enforced? I think it's actually quite straightforward, and I'm actually pretty amazed that the Labour and Conservative group can't actually see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Helen Ann Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo the comments made by my colleague, Councillor Carr. The two things aren't separate. The two things do work hand in hand together. What we're saying is that, yes, we agree with the 20 mile an hour. Yes, I would like the word feasibility taken out and it actually be implemented, but we agree with that. But what we're saying is that there's so many roads now where the 30 mile an hour at the minute that they aren't enforced. Every day we hear from people that they're speeding up and down these roads, and it's not enforced. Is there a point in reducing the speed limit to 20 if it's not going to be enforced? The two things aren't separate. They are both the same. They work hand in hand together. If you're going to want looking at reducing something down to 20 mile an hour, you also need to make sure the tools are in place to ensure that that 20 mile an hour is being enforced. And do you know what, Councillor Clark, I know you don't agree with me and you're muttering, but it is a fact that at the minute, 30 mile an hour roads are not always enforced. Councillor Creamer, if it's working in your area, absolutely fantastic. And this isn't a dig at the police. This is, let's prioritise this. In Ashfield, we've got Fatal 4 as one of our key priorities in Ashfield at the minute, to tackle speed and offence and things like that. I do go to the police crime panels. I do question Caroline Henbury about the numbers of officers and the resources and how they're implemented. And it wasn't that long ago that I pushed through that panel for additional officers to be in the road policing unit. So, Councillor Clark, that is being done. Those meetings are being fully attended because they're being attended by myself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gowland, sorry, just let me explain the situation to you. You may want to speak later. You have the right to speak in response to the amendment, and there are other speakers who have indicated they want to speak, and Councillor Martin has reserved his right to speak, so you may wish to leave your speech until summing up after the end of the debate. Councillor Gurley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The reason I don't support this amendment is because it is distracting it from the original meaning behind the motion in the first place. And we've heard that in Gedling, the police are enforcing it. I know that they're enforcing it in Newark. I know there's council in Ashfield that know that it's being enforced. So we know it's being enforced around the county, don't we? So therefore, it just distracts. Yes, we do need them to do it. Of course we do. But let's actually find out if the public want it. Let's find out if it's actually a viable situation to be able to put it. Where they have to go. Is it going to be a blanket 20 mile an hour in all 30 mile an hour roads? We don't know. We have to look at it and go through things to see why. But bringing the police into it when we know they're enforcing it, don't we? Yeah, we do. Yeah, they might not get everybody, but they do get people. I do community speed watch. We get people and they get spoken to. So let's just get on with the motion, which is about looking at should we have 20 mile an hour roads in our county and how they would work. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Girling. Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you very much. I'll keep speaking, Chairman. I'll keep speaking, Chairman. Hopefully they'll realise I'm talking and stop. I've just literally about a month ago, we've just implemented in Fernwood, where we're having a major speeding issue, an advisory 20 mile an hour signs, all the way up Hollodyke Lane. And up to that point, we were receiving, myself and the parish council were receiving constant complaints about speeding. Since we've implemented this 20 mile an hour advisory, no complaints. No complaints to me, no complaints to the parish council. At the moment in time, it looks like it's working. And I say at the moment in time it looks like it's working because it looks like it's working. Each scheme, each area will need its own solution. That's why I fully support the original motion and I won't be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Ogle.
Thank you, Chairman. I support the original motion. I can't support the amendment because it goes right off. At my last attendance of Safer Neighbourhoods police meetings at Retford, speeding was taken much more seriously than it had been previously by the local officers attending, because I just wonder if you're not quite keeping up with how things are actually moving, because I think since we've had the new administration, I think speeding's been taken much more seriously. Previously, officers said they didn't have enough time to tackle speeding in East Bassetlaw with all the other issues that were going on. But the officers have been doing speed enforcement in the last, certainly before Christmas, in the months before Christmas. They reported they'd done it 6 times in Sturton Steeple, a small village, in the previous couple of months. And they were enforcing in many villages of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. Woodbeck, which is Rampton Mental Hospital, there was 100 speeding offences logged in one morning. I noticed a speed enforcement van at Tuxford on Thursday afternoon. So I believe this commissioner and administration is taking the road safety much more seriously than was done in the past. And all my villages have suffered from speeding. And at last we are getting an enforcement response. Thank you, Chairman.
David, do you want you to exercise your right to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, yeah, so here we are with a motion that we can all agree that needs action implementing on it. I remember back in, I think it's 2018, I came to the Communities and Place Committee and we talked about traffic enforcement cars, because we're talking about 2 things here. We're talking about rat runs and we're talking about school time, school enforcement. And it's been a difficult issue for a long time. And I can remember Kay Cooks, I asked her if we could put purchasing extra traffic cars onto the work programme, and she did. And we have. We bought 3. But these traffic cars struggle because of legislation. So this is what we're talking about. In order for a 20's plenty scheme, like as such was introduced by Labour in the previous administrations, what we need is something with a bit more teeth, and something that's able to legislate and actually get through to people. Because I've got 2 particular rat runs in my division, and there are 1,500 cars that travel up each one of them every day, and 75% of those are doing over 30. In a 30 zone. People live in those areas. I've got 2 reception schools with year 1 and 2, 4 primaries, 1 secondary. Only one of those reception schools has got zigzags. So that's the only place the enforcement car can work. 1 primary school, that's the only place that car can work. In the rest of it, it's double yellers. They can't take any action. And I've said on many occasions that just having that traffic camera car presence in those areas scares the parents and makes them adhere to the regulations. But where it comes to rat runs, we can't even maintain 30 mile an hour. So how are we going to have a talking shop and introduce advisory rules? I'm glad it's working in Councillor Lee's area, but it's a novelty. And I've got 20's plenty on 4 of my primary schools, and I can tell you the only places that anybody takes any notice of it is where I've got a Pelican traffic lady crossing. So, yes, we do agree with the sentiment of the motion, but what we wholeheartedly need is some legislation to support it. And when we talk about police numbers, we know that police numbers went down to about 1,660 in 2015, and they've slowly been coming back up. They're only now circling around 2,000. Without any actual legislation to enforce these regulations, and parents and residents do want it, believe me, because these are residential rat runs that I'm talking about. You've all got them. How many of you are coming to this council, even today, with petitions for zigzags, or pelican crossings, or zebra crossings, or double yellers? What's the point if we don't have anybody who's actually enforcing them? There's no point, and that's my point. We've got traffic cars, but we have to have the right legislation in place around schools for them to be effective. So we need a change in legislation to enable our traffic cars to have a broader scope, or we need support from the police, which is only done by legislation, as you well know. if you get cars parked half on the pavement causing obstruction, the police will only come and do something if there's double yellows there, because that's the TRO, that's the traffic regulation order, and that's only enforceable by the police. So what's the point in spending loads of time and money, wasting our time, having a talking shop about advisory 20's plenty signs with no legislation to back it up? It won't make any difference to our residents whatsoever. So over the next 5 to 9 years, 10 years, you'll still be coming, asking for your zebra crossing, asking for your double yellows, and asking for your zigzags. And that's the whole point. All we're trying to do is beef it up and get the police to engage in this process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No more speakers, so Councillor Hollis, you're right to sum up.
Thank you. And I think a lot of what I've heard is not exactly surprising, but I think just to reinforce what Councillor Martin was just summating, we have a lot of traffic responsibilities within this council. Many of them are down to us to enforce. No better example than something like double yellow lines, parking permits. Councillor Clark will know that when we introduce new parking restrictions at our committee, the very, very first thing we do, and our officers do, is to arrange enforcement of them. So if we do introduce new yellow lines, guess what? They are enforced by our council staff and by our local districts and boroughs. However, doesn't it not seem slightly bizarre to want to spend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of £1,000s of our money introducing new speed limit restrictions, which we'll all know comes with its red tape, which we accept, we have to consult, etc. on lowering speed limits, all those kind of things, actually putting the signs up, the officer time, it may even stray into the millions. What's the point in spending a single penny if we aren't going to enforce it? And I think, to speak to the Conservatives' language, we're very lucky in the Ashfield Independents to run a local council, and we know budgets are tight, and I really appreciate the county council budgets are tight. However, to not want to get the best bang for our buck is absolutely ridiculous, particularly, I think, with the police, who we're allowing to step back and back from their responsibilities. We must demand that they take road safety as seriously as us. So if the Conservatives, and I fully believe the Conservatives made the decision to recommend that we throw our amendment out, if the Conservative group want to throw this amendment out because we aren't prepared to ask the Conservative Crime Commissioner to enforce the speed limits and the good steps that we want to take as a council, what the blooming hell's the point? And to Councillor Gowland, who I will say I'm very impressed with, I certainly want as good as what she was when I'd only been a councillor a few months, I really hope she listened to what Councillor Clark said, because he basically said, we're going to do that many reviews. By the time we've done with the reviews, you'll be sick of them and we're not going to bother doing anything. That's the whole translation of what Councillor Clark said. There'll be absolutely nothing happen on 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. And to be truthful, I just think this is a big waste of money if we're not going to spend it up with the enforcement. The Independent Alliance are very passionate about road safety. We're very passionate about improving the environment and the ecology, whether it be in town centres, city conurbations or rural villages, like I know people like Councillor Girling are passionate about. But this is simply not going to hit the mark. So, Mr Chairman, with respect to members of the Conservative group, I'm frustrated and disappointed they've not chosen to accept the olive branch of cross-party support that we offered. And of course, we remain disappointed, but support encouraging the police to take road safety, a Tory police force, should I add in Nottinghamshire, to take road safety as seriously as we independent and Liberal Democrat councillors do. Thank you.
Councillor Gowland, you have the right to sum up.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, in my own area, as I said when I originally announced the motion, the police are enforcing speed limits. Trent Boulevard, Abbey Road, Belton Road, they've been out on all of them recently. Not enough, but they are out. And I think one of the reasons the police might be more active at the moment is because the police numbers are recovering since they've been decimated since 2010. But I don't think policing is not included in this motion. You know, I would say if you have a 20-mile-an-hour limit, clearly it's assumed that it will be enforced, at least to some extent. And I think this amendment, unfortunately, acts as a distraction for the main motion and frankly puts it at risk. So that's why I'm against it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gall. Councillor Hollis, I think you had some doubt about the procedure. I'll just ask the Chief Executive to explain to you how amendments to motions work.
Before that, Chair, standing on 96, disorderly conduct. Thank you. Disorderly conduct in that Councillor Girling actually said that one of the Independent Alliance councillors had been caught speeding. Well, first, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yes, he did. You did. Caught by, yes. So, which one is it then, Keith? Because what you've done, by what you said, under your breath, by someone in your patch was
Councillor
caught.
Carr.
No, I'm going to continue.
No, Councillor Carr.
I'm going to continue.
Can you?
I am going to continue.
Can you tell me at what point in the proceedings that Councillor Girling is supposed to have made that statement?
He cast an aspersion on the whole of the Independent Alliance because he didn't specify which councillor it was. It was a councillor from your group on your patch. That is appalling behaviour. But actually, Councillor Girling, what I come to expect from you.
Councillor Girling, would you like to clarify that remark?
Actually, and obviously this is recorded, so it'd be very simple to just listen to the recording. In fact, he's probably having a look now to make sure. What I did say is about the fact that people you mentioned the fact in Gedling that it's been enforced. I said in Newark it has, and I know that you lot know that it's enforced in Ashfield. That's what I said. Look it up. It's in there. So just have a look.
Right. Can we bring that to an end, please, and continue with the business? Yes.
Thank you, colleagues. So it is worth clarifying this. I could see, Tom, by your body language that you were querying the way that we finished the amendment. So because we've got lots of motions this afternoon, they could be amended. Of course, it is worth clarifying it because it does get very complicated. So under the rules of debate, paragraph 72 in the Constitution, 511, at the end of a debate on an amendment to a motion, you amended it, the mover of the amendment, in this case, Tom, you, has the right to make closing remarks, which you exercised, before the councillor who moved the original motion, Councillor Gowland, exercises their right of reply. Okay.
Hopefully that clarifies it for everyone. Right, we move to the vote then. So we move to the vote on the amendment.
Have recorded vote, please, Chair.
Get your hands first. Hands first, then ask for it.
Right, all those for the amendment? You got 10-4. Against, please. Against the amendment, not against the original motion. Any abstentions? No abstention. Thank you, members. There will be a recorded vote. So we will ring the division bell to make sure that there's nobody outside the chamber that wants to come and record their vote, and then we'll take the recorded vote. Right, members, could we settle down, please? We need to have quiet while we do the recorded vote.
Thank you, Chairman. So we are now taking a recorded vote, colleagues, on the amendment to motion 1. Starting, please, with Councillor Adair.
Against.
Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Barney.
Against.
Councillor Barnfather. Councillor Bradley. Councillor Butler. Councillor Camilleri.
Against.
Councillor Carlton.
Against.
Councillor Carr. Councillor John Clark. Councillor Neil Clark.
Against.
Councillor Corden. Councillor Cotty. Councillor
Against.
Creamer.
Against.
Councillor Cubley.
Against.
Councillor Doddy.
Against.
Councillor Eddy.
Against.
Councillor Elliott. Councillor Fielding. Councillor Fole. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Against.
Councillor Girling.
Against.
Councillor Gowland. Councillor Henshaw.
Against.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Introna. Councillor Richard Jackson. Councillor Roger Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Kerry.
Against.
Councillor Lawton.
Against.
Councillor Lee.
Against.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor McGrath. Councillor Meakin.
For.
Councillor Moxon.
Against.
Councillor Ogle. Councillor Owen. Councillor Payne. Councillor Place. Councillor Pringle. Councillor Quigley.
Against.
Councillor Saddington.
Against.
Councillor Shaw.
For.
Councillor Helen Ann Smith. Councillor Sam Smith.
Against.
Councillor Tom Smith. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Turner. Councillor Upton.
Against.
Councillor Waters. Councillor Welsh.
Against.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Daniel Williamson.
For.
Councillor Elizabeth Williamson.
For.
Councillor Wilmot.
For.
Councillor Zadrosny. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just confirm the microphone wasn't working? I voted against on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, members. The Outcome of the recorded vote is 11 for, 47 against. So therefore, we revert back to the substantive motion. As the proposer and seconder have already moved and seconded the motion, I have one speaker who indicated earlier on that he wished to speak to the original motion, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak on this very emotive issue. If there's one subject that keeps occurring time after time after time, it's the issue of speeding cars in and around town centres and urban roads. Now, there's been some serious accidents just lately, and now, although we prayed it would never happen, a fatality has taken place in my constituency. And now I have requests from constituents that 6 roads in my area are monitored for speeding as a matter of urgency. And it's not just speeding. Many motorists are driving without due care and attention. Now, something has to be done. And we can start with a speed limit of 20 miles per hour on our residential roads, outside of all schools, and near where children are playing. Now, this has to be taken seriously. The health and safety of our residents is of prime importance. So it is important that the Transport and Environment Committee discuss this problem at length, and of course take any other measures that might be beneficial to this issue. I was upset today because I thought this is not an issue about politics. Nothing about politics. There should be nothing. There should really be nothing about politics. This is saving lives. This is putting people's lives at risk. Not politics and this, that, and the other. But it came to that, and we wasted another half hour on that situation when it shouldn't have happened. But can I also say, the police have to be involved in this. I know you've turned down a letter to the Chief Constable, but the police have to be involved. Why do they have to be involved? Because it requires monitoring this situation. You can put whatever you like on the side of the road. Don't do this, don't do that. Unless it's monitored and enforced, it's pointless. Totally and completely pointless. And that's why I'm saying the police would be asked to do more regular patrols. We'd also ask for more cameras. There are now, councils have got mobile cameras that can be used. Why aren't they being used on roads? Why can't I see on some of the roads that people are saying the real problem, why aren't they being used? Because they should be. And can I say, Chairman, I just hope that something is done about this situation, and seriously done. As I say, I had 6 people from different areas bombarding me with questions. Why aren't something being done about speeding in Hucknall? Now, if you're saying that it's beautifully monitored everywhere, but you go and ask people, knock on doors, which we are doing at this present time, and they're saying, why is this roads allowed the speeding to take place in such terrible situations? I came into Nottingham today, and some of the driving past me, cutting inside me, because I'm going at 30 miles an hour, they're going at 40, 50, whatever it is, cutting inside me and everything. Something has to be done about this situation, and I'm absolutely adamant about this, and I hope you all think sympathetically about it. All I want to do is for somebody to do something about it. And I know Councillor Clark is sympathetic towards that situation and will try and help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this brief. I am going to support this motion. I do feel it is watered down from the addendum we just put in, which is unfortunate. I hope this motion is going to be feasible and enforceable. In Hucknall, I receive a lot of complaints, as an example, about bikes cycling on pavements. That's illegal. Seemingly, it's not enforced. I see complaints about e-scooters in the town. Illegal, seemingly not enforced. I receive complaints about cars idling their engines in a car park. Illegal, seemingly not enforced. The motion we have about cars and trying to reduce the speed is very laudable. I hope there's going to be enforcement, because at the moment it seems that this motion doesn't have any teeth to it, but I'm going to back it and I hope it's going to be enforceable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Water. Councillor Fole.
Thank you. I understand people's concern, but this cannot just be about enforcement. The police can't be everywhere, and can't be everywhere and all the time. And in my experience, and certainly in my patch, most people are law-abiding. If they see a 20-mile-an-hour sign, whether it's enforceable or not, they will slow down, particularly if it's outside a school. And I think we've got to assume that people are kind of civilised, kind, careful enough and care enough about their children and their road safety to actually be able to do that. I mean, one suggestion I would make, if you want to make it more enforceable, is to get do some sort of project with children in schools and get them to do a 20-mile-an-hour kind of speed limit kind of campaign in the schools and get them to have a go at their parents. That's one of the most powerful ways I've found that actually kind of action tends to take place. So, and I think just one other thing as well. I mean, you were concerned about Councillor Clark's kind of response to this motion. Don't you worry. If the Conservatives don't push this through properly and don't kind of do a really good thorough job, we'll flipping well make sure that you do. So, yeah, I think that's something that I think we can all do. So I think, for me, this is a safety issue, particularly around cyclists and pedestrians. I mean, in my patch in particular, we've had various brave attempts to try and get cycle paths through. Nobody mentioned Dovecote Lane. It is a real issue in Beeston, and I think if we can get traffic generally going more slowly, people understanding that it needs to happen, I don't think it's any harm at all trying to get more 20-mile-an-hour speed limits out there. And again, I understand the enforceability issue. I understand that, and clearly there has to be some kind of enforcement, but it can't just be about that. So thanks for the cross-party support, and thank you for your support too. It's much appreciated, and let's all vote for this, and let's make sure something happens as a result.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Fole. Councillor Place.
Thank you. Can I talk to Councillor Wilmot? There's problems with drivers. They want educating more than anybody, and it's a job at police to do that always. And power's in your hands as much as mine. I did community speed watch in 2018, and I go out and stand on the street. We can't prosecute, but we can pass numbers on. What have I got? Speed vans are not always used by police. I know that because I often stop and ask them where they've been, because people are always saying to me they've not been an hours, they've not been an hours. And police around where I live have got enough on catching villains without looking for speeders. Sorry, we've got to do something ourselves to help it.
Thank you, Councillor Place. Councillor Girling.
Clapping. Are you listening, Councillor Clark, in case you want to misquote me again? Right. I rise to support this motion, and just a little bit of background to it. I was actually, believe it or not, a driving examiner. So I took people on driving tests, and also my responsibility within my regiment was if anybody in the fleet had an accident, it was down to me to go and investigate that accident, see if he was going to get charged for not being a good driver as a grenadier. So I know a little bit about road safety, because that was my responsibility. I know a bit about how people drive, because I taught people to drive, and I was actually known as the Terminator, because I think I terminated more tests than I passed. Because a vehicle is a weapon. So I'm fully aware of the importance of road safety. Absolutely. Locally, I was the first person to set up a community speed watch in Newark. And in fact, I used the LDF money to buy a speed gun along with the local councillor, Councillor Wallace. And that's been running successfully all those years. And in fact, when we did the training that we did with the police, they then made me so I could do the training for anybody else, so train the trainer. And in fact, I then went on and trained, I think, Councillor Lee on the speed gun. And you say that the 20s doesn't work in your area, but maybe the 20 works in Councillor Lee's area is because that's not all it's been. It's not just been the 20-mile-an-hour speed sign. It's been the fact that the community have been going out there doing the community speed watch. People become more aware of the fact that they're being monitored in those areas. And so it's changing the perception, changing the psychology of the drivers. So it's not just about 20, it's about lots of measures. And yes, the police are involved, of course they are. And I heard Councillor Martin going on about legislation. Well, if it mentioned legislation in the amendment, then maybe we could have supported it, but it didn't. So my thing is, this is really important to look at it. Not every street will need to be 20 in this county, whether it's in an estate or not, because some of them don't lend themselves for that. You know, so we need to do a review. We need to look at every area to see what's best for it. We need to consult with people, because we're going to impose, if we would listen to them, we'll be imposing 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on people, and it might not be what that community wants. And it's our responsibility to consult, and that's what we do. So I hope that the chairman that's going to take this forward actually looks into the whole of the road safety issue, so we can make sure that anybody driving on our roads in Nottinghamshire complies with our road safety measures and that people are safe. That's the fundamental reason for the motion that's been put forward this morning. I welcome it. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with 20 mile an hour as a speed limit, but I'm looking forward to looking at the facts. I'm looking forward to making sure that what we do is the right thing, on top of the other measures that I think we should also look at as well. Yeah, and we all deserve to be in a safe space and driving safely on those roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Girling. Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I obviously rise in support of the motion, the original motion that's before us. We've heard a lot about policing and their contribution to enforcement, which would be relative to the motion that we are currently debating. Of course, the police by consent. That's what we do in this country. And at the moment, the priorities, I would suggest for most members of the public, are that they deal with serious and organised crime, they deal with violence, they deal with sexual offences. They protect the public from criminals. Policing 20 or 30 years ago had a much larger road safety element to it. It wasn't anything to do with numbers. There were far less officers in my day than there are now. It was simply because they were the only people who were empowered to deal with speeding issues or indeed any other road traffic issues. Now, of course, we have other bodies. So the Not Safety Camera Partnership in Nottinghamshire actually prosecute far more people for speeding offences than the police will ever do. The police are there in many ways nowadays to supplement the Nottinghamshire Safety Camera Partnership in specific areas. And in Gedling, for instance, in Gedling North, as I'm sure Ashfield must have the similar setup, we meet with our local inspector and we agree on our policing priorities for that area. One of those policing priorities in my area is speeding. So as well as the Safety Camera Partnership, we also have the Operation Reacher team who come out and do some more ad hoc enforcement at particular problem times and locations. The Safety Camera Partnership can only operate in areas which meet a certain criteria, and that's a criteria which we contribute to data from this authority in respect of the number of accidents, the type of accident, serious fatality, minor, etc. And there has to be a strict criteria for a van to suddenly appear on your road and stick its camera out the back window. They are not police officers inside that van. Many of them may be retired police officers, but they're not actually police officers. Can I say, I rise more in support to Councillor Place than I do to the motion. The motion I obviously support, but Councillor Place absolutely made the point that it's actually in our hands as well. It's very easy to try and pass off the responsibility. You know, out of my councillor divisional fund, I purchased a speed camera for my community speed watch team. I've stood out there with my community speed watch team and indeed with the former Police and Crime Commissioner, Paddy Tippin, with the local policing inspector, etc. So we all have a role to play in this. We all have a role to be able to promote road safety, whether or not it's in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, a 30-mile-an-hour zone, or anything else. I'm sure that most of us do those things as a matter of course, but it's a community responsibility, not just a police responsibility.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather. Councillor John Clark.
MBE, yeah. Never get over that, will we? Yeah, agreeing with Chris there. You know, we've got it. It's all right criticising everybody else, and you can see how busy the police are at the moment, chasing around. We've got to meet halfway. The public's got to wake up and say, one is take your foot off, take the lead out your shoe, and start thinking about it, and come and see if we can, you know, if we can try and get a better, you know, better deal at going. At the moment, we've got in our civic park in Arnold, where the officers are there, we're getting absolute, somebody who's doing more than 20 mile an hour. They've got orange coats on, orange things on the back, full of Mac this, Mac that, and all the rest of it that you can have delivered on a bike. Come speeding through. There is no control. In fact, there will be, because I start shoving a few sticks in the wheels when they come through, because it's getting absolutely ridiculous. E-scooters, I think, was it you, Jason? Somebody mentioned it, about the e-scooters. They're balmy. You know, there's that many out there. It's probably somewhere we could actually wake the police up a bit and get Craig to get one or two nicked and get them into the courts, because those e-scooters are illegal apart from them damn things they've got in the city. You know, we never grant them in the county because they're a danger. They just think they can charge through. If you walk back, as we will tonight, because no doubt call in for a pint on the way back, walk through there, go through Broadmarsh, you watch them come down there past St Peter's Church. You watch them come down on the bikes, Deliveroo, all the rest of them. There's a lot of work there that this committee could take on as well to raise it. The road humps, I mean, we all remember Darryl Polk that used to be on here. Well, Darryl went mad, absolutely mad in the Cavendish ward. Well, we'll have all these bumps down to the point that all the residents got together, marched up with a camel, not a real camel, but a camel with people in because they'd got the hump. And so they marched up to his house to campaign over these. We did manage to get, with Brian Duff then was in transport, one of the officers, we did get some of those taken out. They're an absolute hazard. They're causing damage to cars. There's so many. If you go up Cavendish Road, come up from where the old Carlton Nick was there, and you come up there, there's just so many of these wretched things. And there seems to be a better way of designing speed better with the chicanes and things similar to what they've got in St Anne's, those types of things. So that's part of my thing. And other simple things, absolutely simple things. We put out as this authority, we used to put out a lot. 30 means 30. When Terry Butler that sat there this morning was a big person doing that. We had the bits about the motorbike and showing the things, speed, everything on that. That was a simple, effective way. And when we got them scattered all over the place, it did begin to work. People began to thought about it. And I was just thinking as I sat here, why don't we go home? We've all got a yellow coat of some sort. Get your hairdryer out and stand on the street and just see the effect that makes on people. But we've got to increase not only the policing, but our own publicity. We have an incredible amount of fabric across this county and across the districts and across everywhere else with publicity. We've got to keep ramming that message home. And when they're caught, they need to go to court. And when they're in court, they need nicking, because they're absolute danger. They're havoc to people's lives. When people lose a life now, I think the horrible figure is around about £2 million per death that it costs the state. Times that by how many people have been killed recently. So I'd ask in this, it could go a lot further on. Fully support the motion there, but I would ask, please, can we have a time scale on it? Can we bring it back here? We're more or less all agreed. Can we bring it back here and say, that's the way we're going to move forward, because we're going to slow some of you people down, because the place is going mad. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Jazodny.
Thank you, Chairman. As I rise, I've got the ringing of the Twilight Zone in my ears. I think I've walked into a parallel universe. I'm not sure if the Labour Party have been hoodwinked into this let's all be nicely by the Conservatives, or they're just not seeing it. But I've never known something that's so simple where the whole chamber agrees be so talked out and untoothy. And Councillor Ogle spoke earlier and said the new administration here is taking this far more seriously than the past. The past administration was you. The last 4 years were you. And Councillor Smith spoke in December about a guy in Healdswood who'd just been hit by a car.
The police commissioner, Councillor Zadrosny. I didn't mention the police commissioner.
No, that's not what you said. No, it's not what he said at all. It's not what he said. And whoa, I'm speaking. I ain't chirping when you're stupid. You can ooh all you like. I'm on my feet. I think shut up and listen, because it's an absolute disgrace what's happening in this chamber. When Councillor Smith spoke about her resident in December, 2 days later he died. He died at the hands of this Conservative administration who don't give a toss about sorting these problems out.
Councillor Zadrosny.
You're going to call me, but not all the oohers now? Go on.
Well,
go
there's
on,
a difference between ooh and what you're not talking to the motion.
I'm talking about speeding traffic. Brian Chettle in Skegby was killed in December by a speeding car. We rose it at the chamber last December. He's dead, Mr. Chairman. He's dead. And Councillor Ogle says he's now taking it more seriously.
Is it a point of order you put your hand up for?
Outrageous. Oh, go on, the most sensitive councillor in the country is upset that politicians are talking politically. Go back, Councillor Barney. I'll give way. Go, please. Before you cry, I've got spare tissues.
Councillor Zadrosny, your behaviour is becoming unacceptable. Please calm down.
Thank you.
Councillor Barney.
I appreciate
Councillor
that.
Barney, before you start, is it a point of order? Because you're indicating that you wish to speak further down the list.
Yes.
Is this a point of order?
It's not a point of order.
Then would you please sit down?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quiet, Boyd. You might learn something. Quiet. I'm happy to educate you, but let me do it. Mr. Chairman, the problem is here that, as Councillor Foll said a number of times, it can't just be about enforcement. This motion's not about enforcement at all now. Not at all. And that's the problem. It's not two things, it's one. It's what the county council will do. And quite frankly, I agree with what Councillor Place had to say. Not Councillor Barnfather, but Councillor Place said, we want our police concentrating on villains. We want them doing the right job. Of course we do. They can't do this as well because that party has cut 136 police officers in Nottinghamshire since they took over in government in 2010. So of course they can't do both jobs because there's not enough of them. And then for Councillor Barnfather to say we all have to play a role, but not the police. It's a crime. I'm telling you about a man who's died from a crime, but you don't want the police involved. And we're talking about let's get a woman on the street with a hairdryer to slow traffic down. It's utterly bonkers. Of course we support the motion. Of course we want this investigation. But how can we do our bit as a county council, but not write a letter to the chief constable and say, if we do this thing, can you enforce it? The crime that kills people, utter twaddle. And you tell me I'm being rude? I ask you, Councillor Clark, in your department, to come and meet the family of Brian. I ask you to come and do it. Come on, Councillor Barney. You don't like the politics? Your side of the chamber has blood on your hands. Blood on your hands. And you should be thoroughly ashamed. So we will support this motion, not that it will do any good, and I hope the Labour group will hold them to task. I've not a lot of faith that you will, but I hope in a few months, when they've not done anything that they say they will, because they've had 5 years and done sod all, that you realise that they're pulling the wool over your eyes.
Councillor Zrodny, could I ask, please, that you moderate your language and keep the temperature in this room down? We're in danger of getting into spurious arguments about things that are not of concern to our residents, and it's getting rather out of hand. So I will, if it continues, get up and ask you to stop speaking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's the first time I've stood up since everybody spoke about Maureen. Can I just take this opportunity, Councillor Payne, saying how I really appreciated your eulogy. It was absolutely spot on, and thank you on behalf of our group for your response and your support of Maureen and and her family. I welcome this motion, so thank you to the mover and seconder, Penny and Neil. I think it's a good cross-party compromise that will go in front of Neil to get something done on this particular issue. My group, sorry, not my group, Ben's group will be supporting it. Now he's in the chamber. So I wrote this before I came into the chamber. Okay, Ben's group will be supporting this. Okay, I think all the independents have done is muddied the waters, really, just trying to play politics with something that's trying to achieve something. And so as a result, all they've done is just, well, effectively done that, muddied the water. It's opposition for opposition's sake, which is always a bad way to operate. I just remind members that, you know, it is our job to set policy. And to set policy, you should always do it from a position of knowledge and a position of having all the information to hand, not on the hoof. And that is what Councillor Clark's committee has been tasked to do, and that's what Councillor Clark's committee will do. So we look forward to hearing what his findings are, which will be cross-party, and we'll listen to all members who want to have an input on this particular issue. So, so without more ado, we will be supporting the original motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. And I think, like Councillor Zadrozny, I do feel slightly spun out by the fact that I've heard that somehow road safety isn't an important crime. I mean, particularly from Councillor Barnfather, I think he used a phrase that, you know, we want the police fighting real criminals. I'm sorry, but and the only way I can put it is probably a very straightforward. My family are quite blessed to own quite a bit of property. I know members opposite own quite a bit of property and land. If people were dying on our land and property repeatedly, arguably in circumstances that we could do something about, as personal people, we would do something about it. Nottinghamshire's roads are your property. Councillor Clark is responsible for every inch and centimetre of our roads and pavements. So if people are dying on property owned by the County Council, on Conservative and Councillor Clark's watch, don't be surprised when we get frustrated about it. Because Brian Chettle worked day in, day out in the food bank that I run. He got needlessly run over yards from his property and died 2 days after the last full council meeting. So yes, we are upset. And Councillor Barney, as a very gentle respect and probably word of advice, do not, well, he has repeatedly said stuff in the press. He's repeatedly said something in the committee, and I can dare say he's going to say exactly the same thing today, how shocked and upset he is that people have been passionate about stuff they believe in. Yes, we will be. Just because Conservatives are absolutely blooming soulless about things. You know, and to be honest with you, it's really frustrating that the very reason I got elected to the council was my grandma's best friend, Hilda. She got run over outside what is now the new Brierley Medical Centre. Councillor Anderson will know it very well. Both her and her husband and I were passionate advocates about getting something done outside. And guess what? For months and months before, Hilda and my grandma were trying to get a zebra crossing outside. She got run over and killed only days after she'd finished doing the petition. And guess what? The county council put a zebra crossing outside. We act as the county council when we need to, so why shouldn't we demand the same thing from the police? And to somehow suggest that road safety is not as important as any other crime, I'm sorry, but I'll tell you something, as district council leaders and borough leaders, if Michael Payne stood up and suddenly said he's going to stop picking litter up in Gedling and leave it to the community to pick up, I think we'd all be in uproar. It is the police's responsibility to police road safety. And you know something? It's great that members of your community have got the time on their hands to actually do things like speed watch. Because I tell you what, people in Uthwaite haven't. They're worrying about how they're going to have to spend hours and hours extra at work paying for the extra £150 a month on their energy. And I'm wondering how, but the joking aside, you go into people's houses in my constituency, and I live in the centre of my division, they haven't got food in the cupboards. And it's not a joke. Literally, you look on the meter, and by the way, people don't have prepayments in my divisions of Wood. You look at the meter, and they've got pennies on their electric meter and gas. That's what they're worried about. And we're somehow saying that road safety isn't important, and we're not going to ask the police to enforce it. And I think the final point I'll make is Columbia Street. In good faith, I put Columbia Street forward as one of my priorities. And last week, I got an email from a council officer asking me to say, what problems are there on Columbia Street? Well, the problem is it's a long straight road that people fly down at 50 miles an hour with a play park that Ashfield District Council is investing £350,000 in, encouraging families to use the open space, be healthy, do everything that we all support. And the county council have done what we can do in a lot of respects there by putting a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Members all know that we aren't allowed to put 30-mile-an-hour repeater circles down it like we are in 40s and 50s, so we rely on the police doing more. So the only option we have then, and I agree with Councillor Clark's point about road humps, is road humps. What other option do we have unless the police are going to park a van on there? So that's why I put it down as one of my priorities. And yes, we should demand the police do stuff. And like the Independent Alliance have said so far, we will support this, but I think, frankly, it's like taking a lovely hot meal to somebody and not providing them with a knife and fork. Nothing's going to happen. We're just going to be looking at these signs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Barney.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually I'm quite startled by the response that I provoked in the chamber this afternoon. But I want to actually not play politics with this issue. And I want to reach out across this chamber. And first of all, I want to address Councillor John Wilmot, who I think is a man of great dignity and a man of great respect, who I think has entered this chamber for all the right reasons, and I think similar reasons to the reasons I have entered this chamber. Because I care. I don't want to play politics over anything. I want to do the right thing. And for me, the issues of road safety, as I believe they are with Councillor Wilmot as well, and I have great compassion for the 6 residents in Hucknall that you have said have tragically lost their lives. I'm so sorry to hear that. And for them, and for Councillor Hollis's residents, which he also speaks so passionately about, people who've lost their lives on the roads of Nottinghamshire, I want to show the utmost respect and dignity. And I refuse to play politics with this issue. And I don't say that for a soundbite. I don't say that for effect. I say that because I do have blood on my hands. Councillor Zadrozny looked at this group and said, we have blood on our hands. I have blood on my hands. Because in November last year, in my village, the village I've lived in all my life, 2 people were killed on the roads on a single stretch of Park Lane, Sutton Bonington. It's a stretch of road with a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in a very rural, our southernmost village in Nottinghamshire. The first of those individuals was a young man in his early 20s. The second of those individuals is a fellow who I did not want to bring into this chamber out of respect, and I'm sorry to do so, but I feel that I've been led to do so because of the way this conversation's gone. So out of respect for his family, I don't want to dwell on it too long. But I happen to be the first member of the community on the scene. It was a hit and run. I got there first. I got out of my car and I tried to save his life. I spent half an hour trying to resuscitate him. I got covered in his blood. So please do not insinuate that any member, regardless of their political colour, regardless of their political persuasion, doesn't care wholeheartedly about this issue. We all do. And I'm sorry that if I come across as a weeping, compassionate person, that's what I am. And I also just want to pick up, there was a comment about me going to the press. Only once in my life have I gone to the press. And I, again, wouldn't dwell on this. I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but it was because I was correcting an article in my early 20s about that Loughborough Echo had published about a soup run that I'd started in my community. So all those years ago I cared. I care now. I'm in it for the reasons that I was then in my early 20s, as I was when I went to help save that man's life, because I care. And I put it to you that Councillor Maureen Dobson was a person in this chamber because she cared. That's why we're all here. And I want to unite this chamber. I want to do the right things by the citizens of Nottinghamshire. I don't give a shit about politics when it comes down to the issues of road safety. I care about lives. We all care about lives. And lastly, I just want to commend the police. That night when I was lying in November trying to resuscitate that man, not knowing what to do, not knowing what my next call should be, the police stayed with me on the phone. They walked me through every step of what I should do with resuscitation. They were my knight in shining armour. But when I saw those blue lights coming along the street and they came to help, boy, the relief was just immense. And for the days preceding that, the police have been fantastic with the family, with the community, with a group of young lads that were also involved, providing support, providing counselling. So I give a huge shout out for the police and also for Nottinghamshire County Council's road safety teams and VIA, who have continued to work with me on both of these tragic incidents since my election in May, who take these issues enormously seriously. And working together, we are doing all we can to minimise tragic deaths across our county. I know that's the case of all of our officers. I know that's the case of every member on my own team and on my own team across this chamber. And I'm sorry that if I've caused such ramifications in the independent group that you think I'm some kind of lightweight, half-hearted, insincere person. I'm not that. I'm not that.
They'll need a leaf out
And
of
I'm
your
sorry
book.
I've taken so long to speak. And again, my heart goes out for the residents across our county that have lost their lives. This is not about me. It's about them. And we're doing what we can to help.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Just one point. I didn't pick you up while you were speaking, but could you be careful with the language that you use? Some people may have found that word that indicates a bodily function a swear word. So
I withdraw it and I apologise, and it was because I was speaking too emotionally, and I would not usually use that phraseology, and I withdraw it and apologise wholeheartedly.
Councillor Henshaw.
Thanks, Councillor Quigley. Before I speak in support of the motion, I understand that people can become passionate in relation to putting points of view forward. People are passionate about what they believe in and what they stand for, no more so than me. But when that passion and exuberance extends to what I would see as bullying, I don't agree with it. And we have to be extremely careful when we discuss issues that what we discuss doesn't digress into a situation where members are falling out and what I see as bullying each other. It doesn't show this council in a good light, and it doesn't show individuals in a good light. So I'd just like to say that. I don't want to keep council long, but when we look at the actual motion, the first line, this council recognises. This council recognises. And we all know that if we have a situation where somebody is in the unfortunate position of being struck or hit by a car at 20 miles an hour, the chances of being really seriously injured are minimised. So that's one reason why we should look very, very seriously, and the motion does, of including a 20 mile an hour speed limit. The second salient point, as I see it, this council resolves. That means we make a decision. Therefore, to task the Transport and Environment Committee with exploring the feasibility of implementing that 20 mile an hour and other measures to try and help with road safety. And if this council resolves something, i.e. we make a decision on it, it's incumbent on us all to make sure what we've resolved, we look at and try and extend that to doing something about the situation. Now that's as I see it. Perhaps everybody in this chamber doesn't see it that way. And we can all get passionate about things, but let's draw back a little bit. And I'd like to ask, through the chair, because there's been great mention about community speed watch, if somebody can explain to me how I can get one, I would much appreciate it, because we've had a serious accident in my division in relation to a serious road accident, a serious road accident and a fatality. So if that information can come forward to all members, perhaps we could look at it. And with that, Chair, I urge everybody in this chamber to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The sad thing is, no one disagrees about the worry about speeding.
No.
We've all got hot spots in our patches. We've all got roads that we're always worried about. We've nearly all had fatal accidents as well, and it's sickening when it happens. And I must say, I object strongly to being called soulless. That was a disgraceful thing to say. I won't go into detail now, but there's been plenty of times in this chamber when I've been sitting here listening to you and your colleagues, Councillor Hollis, talking complete nonsense, and you've kept me from other things in my life that could have been far more important. But I'm not going to go there now because it's not appropriate. But the reality is, if we're doing our job as local councillors, we are liaising with our local police, as colleagues have said. I'm forever banging on about my local beat manager about speeding on certain roads. And you know what? He listens. He responds. And sure, I know they can't be out there all the time, but they do go out when they can do. And we have had results. And I dare to say as well that you're missing the point with regards to the way this council works. And I understand that because you're always going in and out of the chamber, so you miss out on rules and instructions. But the amendment you put to the original motion, which incidentally we've all got to support, and we're going to support, the amendment you put, to my mind, was going off a subject. You were splitting it too much, and I know what you're trying to say, but it was the wrong place, it was the wrong motion to say it. But you're just jumping onto it so you could try and get a little headline on your Facebook, talking of which, why don't you put Councillor Barney's experience on your Facebook and your leaflets? You're probably doing something like that right at the moment. So come on. Don't you accuse us of not taking this seriously, because we all know that this is a big issue, whether it's 30 miles an hour, whether it's 20 miles an hour, or dare I say, we've all got main roads in our areas where people are going way above the national limit. It's a big problem. This is not necessarily the right place to try and get the police to deal with it. We've got a police commissioner. If we're doing our job again, we should be lobbying the crime panel and the crime commissioner. Some of us are. Some of us may not be. Some of us may be busy doing other things that really is a waste of time. So, Mr. Chairman, there's a lot being said about this motion this afternoon. There's been a lot of emotion, both said and also people no doubt have got thoughts and personal thoughts about the effects of speeding and decisions we're taking. I think, well, I'm just confirming I fully support the motion and ask colleagues it's the only thing we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Henshaw, could you turn your light off?
Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Saddington.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I was not going to speak on this, but what has taken place has caused me to get up and stand up. Firstly, we all have issues with speed. There is no exception. But I have to say, I have worked with Councillor Barney for the last 6 months. He has been the most wonderful vice chairman for me. He has a great conscience. And for you to stand up and insult him when he's a new member and he speaks far kinder than you, he doesn't shout, he speaks what he feels. And I have to say, you over there, you're either missing when something's being said, where's the two on the front bench now, or you're insulting somebody. Councillor Barney is
point
a
of order, Chair.
wonderful...
Point of order.
Councillor Barney is a wonderful councillor, and we don't need insults from you on this side.
Then we have a point of order.
Point of order, Chair. I propose that we go to the vote because this is denigrating into a slanging match. Thank you.
Excuse me, you might not like what you hear, but we didn't like what we heard over here. So please take a leaf out of Councillor Barney's book.
Councillor Carr.
Right, generalisations. Good, isn't it? Yeah, I can stand there and say, all you Conservatives are rubbish, you don't care about anybody. I know that's not true because you're all individuals. That's the same here, Councillor Saddington. So please don't generalise when you call people. I've got no problem with Councillor Barney. I think he spoke very well just now. No problem at all. But people's passions sometimes get the better of them. Some of us are able to control them. Some of us aren't able to control them as full as they should do. But having said that, they're passionate. Their passion is important, and it's because of the passion that we're all here. That's what I want to say. All I would say is that the speeding teams, actually at one time, I think it was when you were in power, the speeding teams were actually against council policy, and a councillor could not buy speed cameras out of their money because it was against council policy. And the reason it was against council policy is because up and down the country, people doing these had been assaulted by motorists getting out the car and walloping one. So I would really, really err on caution if we're trying to increase the number of these teams that go out. And of course, also, if you live in an area like mine where all the roads are residential, it's very difficult to do because you haven't got enough space to actually catch them on the camera because of the parked cars and everything. So it's very limited, and I really don't think that we should be potentially putting members of the public at risk, or indeed we should be doing a full risk assessment before we allow councillors to fund.
Point of order, Chairman. Point of order. 86. Point of order and personal explanation.
Councillor Girling.
Yeah, thank you. It's to help.
Oh well.
Yeah, it's to help. So I'm not here to have a go. Right. When you do a community speed watch, there is a risk assessment done.
Yes.
Every single area. I've been doing community speed watch now since 2005. 2006, I think you said to talk. Nobody's hit me.
Well, I'm not surprised.
In fairness, and I think we've had this discussion in another meeting. I represent one of the largest council estate in Nottinghamshire. Yeah, it's in places. It's quite colourful. Yeah, the only incident we've ever had is a couple walked past and said, "Why don't you catch real criminals?" Yeah, they didn't realise we were the community because we had these yellow vests on and the speed gun. So it's done safely. We do actually now have either a PCSO or a police officer with us.
That's
so
fine.
you don't risk yourselves. But if you want me to come and protect you, I'm more than happy to do that.
That's fine. I've got. To be honest with you, I'll just fall on them and they won't do anything. But there you go. But yeah, I think we need to be careful what we're doing here. But we will support this motion. But we are concerned that it's likely it may get watered down. So I suppose as a joint opposition, we should make sure that they don't do that. And let's move forward, for goodness sake. Thank you.
Chairman, can we call the motion to the vote, please?
Councillor Gowland has the right to sum up and reply if she wishes to.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to express my sympathies to the families of the casualties in Councillor Wilmot's area, of Brian Chettle, the casualty in Sutton Bonington, and all the casualties on the roads of Nottinghamshire. Councillor Clark, I'm slightly concerned about your focus on feasibility. We all, as we've heard today, everybody in this room stood for election to make a change, and this needs action, as we've heard today. Don't be scared. People want this. Local communities are acting, as we've heard today. The residents of Henry Road and West Bridgeford are working with the local schools to try and reduce speed limits around the schools. I would ask, we've been saying it would be really helpful if all councillors were informed on how to set up community speed watches. We're very keen to do that. But I agree with Tom that not all communities have the advantage of some well-resourced communities to be able to do this all the time. So it's got to be supported by the police. So coming to enforcement, I don't want advisory limits. They're just too confusing. I'm confused. My own roads turned from advisory to being enforceable, and I didn't realise, I'll be honest. I know now because I'm a councillor. So no advisory limits. If we believe there should be 20, it should be 20. Enforceable limits are enforceable, so the police should be enforcing them, or they should be expected to play their part within the resources available to them. And I talk to my local beat officer, and they do come when they can. Enforceable limits should be enforceable around schools, around shops, around play areas, but it shouldn't just be about limits. We need to make sure the roads are designed in such a way as to slow down traffic around residential areas. Not speed humps, or at least not just speed humps, chicanes, trees, and this sort of thing. So I'm really pleased that everybody understands the importance of this, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. We now move to the vote on the substantive motion. All those in favour? That is unanimous and clearly carried. And we move on to motion 2. And I no doubt Councillor Doddy is very pleased that his motion has at last come before Council. Call on Councillor Doddy to move his motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. I feel quite traumatised after that last motion, so it could take me a few seconds to get going there. They do say county council is not for people who are very, very sensitive. You have to have quite a thick skin. Thank you. Fantastic. It gives me great pleasure, Chair, to finally get round to presenting motion 2. This is a motion, when I read it, I feel really pleased with it. I think it's a really exciting motion, this is. It starts off by just saying that we are in a crisis. We're in an immediacy of a nutritional emergency for the people of Nottinghamshire. It goes on to say how that's going to affect all of us, all of our residents, overwhelm the NHS. It then points out how important the health and well-being body is and how important it's going to be in driving the preventative agenda through the ICS and through the ICP. And then it starts to say, what can we do to improve it through making us a healthy, food, sustainable shire? Nutrition, an adequate and well-balanced diet. That's all it means, an adequate and well-balanced diet. In 2022, are we not able to provide that for the people of Nottinghamshire? We ourselves are 66% of the population, way above the national average, who are obese or overweight. Some parts of our areas, the more deprived areas, Mansfield, for example, has got 72% overweight or obese. It's like they're trying to create some sort of herd immunity. If we look at obesity in itself and say, what does that mean for our residents? A child at reception level, 4 to 5 years of age, 15% of them in Nottingham can turn up obese or overweight. By the time they get to year 6, that can be 20 to 25%. And you might say, that's just a bonny kid. But if there's a child who accidentally dies at the age of 7 or 8, and that child goes for an autopsy, and they cut that child open, and they look at the child's arteries, the fat is already growing on those arteries. Those arteries are already starting to narrow on the children we send to school at 5, years of age. And what does that mean? That at 40 and 50, they've got high blood pressure, they've got angina, then they have a stroke. And most of their life is spent in ill health. And it starts right from the moment that child presents itself at school. And my job as Chair of Health and Wellbeing is to give every child the best start in life. Is it the best start in life sending kids to school where their arteries are already narrowing, where their lifespan is already being dictated for them? And what happens to those children? 60 to 70% of them go on to be obese adults. And what happens? We get an explosion of diabetes that causes this country billions of pounds in expenses. It then not only does that, but it becomes the second greatest cause of cancer that we know of. Obesity kills people. It's a disease. And they're not nice cancers. They're esophageal cancers. They're bowel cancers. They're horrible ways to die. Now, those people have a right to have a healthy life expectancy and a life expectancy. And once again, it's my job as the Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, a statutory obligation, no less, to extend the life expectancy of the people of Nottinghamshire, to extend the healthy life expectancy. But I can't do that because of the challenge of nutrition that exists. And thirdly, the most important point of all, this is not a lifestyle choice. This is not something that they choose to do. This is a health inequality. And again, statutory implication is that we need to improve the health of the population purely because it's an inequity. It's an inequality. If you look at a child in Rushcliffe going to school, 5% of them will be obese. You look at somebody from Ashfield going to school, 20, 25% of them are obese or overweight. That is not a choice. Twice as many people in deprived areas are overweight as those in the undeprived areas. If we look at what we're doing, we haven't been totally ignoring this problem. We are one of 5 counties in the whole of England that have a childhood obesity trailblazer programme. What does that mean? We're looking at ways to find the Holy Grail, to intervene at that very early stage after birth before they get to school to reduce childhood obesity. We have ABL, A Better Life, with weight management programs. What did we do when we employed them? We said you must skew your efforts to the most deprived people in the community. And that's what we've asked them to do. They get a reward for targeting the most deprived areas and reducing their risks from obesity. So we are left with that challenge of how are we going to continue to intervene? And I hear all about the climate emergency and carbon neutrality. I give you today nothing less than a nutritional emergency, and we need calorie neutrality. I give you one final point. What's the point in saving the planet if we're losing the population? This is the most important motion that's come before you because your kids are dying today. Your residents are dying today. And this needs to be talked about in the same way as we become open about depression, in the same ways that we can open about other illnesses. We need to talk about the nutritional challenge to the people. And we're going to go out and create in Nottinghamshire Food Shire. We're going to get businesses to sign up to understand that if you have a business and you provide food for your staff, you have a responsibility to make that nutritious food. In the same way as we stop people smoking in places, we provided breastfeeding facilities for them. We've provided a mental health concordat so we can look around and see if somebody needs help or intervention because they could be in distress. We want to be doing exactly the same thing with nutrition. Ladies and gentlemen, I put forward to you one of the most beautiful motions that come before you. I want you all to get behind it and support it 100% because every single one of your residents will benefit from this. Thank you very much.
I call upon Councillor Bruce Lawton to second.
Thank you very much. I read off my phone, it says obesity is serious because it is associated with poorer mental health outcomes and reduced quality of life. Obesity is associated with the leading causes of death in the United States and worldwide, including diabetes, heart heart disease, strokes, and some types of cancer. That is how important this motion is that John Doddy has put in front of us today. I applaud you, John. You're always difficult to follow and the Chamber, but I applaud this motion, so well done on behalf of my residents I represent and the people of Nottinghamshire, and also the work you are doing to try and address this particular issue. You are perfectly placed with your position, your job, to understand the issues that are involved in it. It's interesting. I am what is called an endomorph, and John will know what I'm talking about. I naturally put on weight. I only have to look at food, and I put on weight. I always look at ectomorphs and see them and think, how the hell do you get away with that? I think you're an ectomorph, Andre, looking at you. But you know, but it is, and so it is a real issue, and has been all my life. I can put on weight just by looking at food, and so I constantly have to put checks and balances in place to be able to deal with that. But unfortunately, if you live in poverty, you don't have that ability to be able to manage the situation. You cannot afford to manage that situation, and it drives you into obesity. And we've just, I've just told you that one of the quickest ways of dying in this country is to be obese, and obese for a long period of time. And it is extremely dangerous to your health, your well-being, and will affect your longevity. Not only does it do that, it also drives all our service industries which are having to deal with these particular issues. So there are side impacts by obesity within the National Health Service particularly. What it is doing is diverting resources which could be spent on dealing with other illnesses in the community. And so it is affecting their well-being as well. And people don't recognise this is an issue. In my view, obesity is worse than smoking. It's having a bigger impact on the community than smoking. It's killing more people in Nottinghamshire. And that's, again, why I'm seconding this motion. John is absolutely right. We have got to grasp this issue. If we do not grasp it, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. We've got to grasp the issue. We've got to look at the sources of the problem and deal with it, effectively and in a proactive way. So we recognise that poor diet has an impact on obesity in the people that we represent. So how do we improve this? And those are the issues that John is dealing with. Now this Conservative administration, it represents some of the poorest estates in Nottinghamshire. And that is why when we were doing our plan, our 10-year plan, I was insistent, and Derek will hold me out on this. I was insistent that we as Conservatives looked at the issues which are involved within these particular areas that we now represent. There are individuals within those communities that cannot afford to look after their own health, and that has got to change. We have got to give people the opportunity. I'm not talking about holding the hand, but I'm talking about giving them the opportunity to improve their livelihoods and their own personal health. And so poor nutrition, but it's not only obesity, it's also poor nutrition. The old adage, you used to be on a ship and you catch scurvy because you've got no vitamin C. That is going back centuries. But at the end of the day, poor nutrition has a significant impact on the health and well-being of our residents. And this is why particularly in the local plan, we have a section and it says create healthy and sustainable places and promote people's well-being. We'll develop and deliver a Nottinghamshire food charter and partnership action plan that shows the role food can play in creating healthier lives, richer economies and a sustainable environment. We'll also make the most of planning and transport systems to make local areas safer and easier places to be active and socialise. This will improve health and well-being and benefit our environment as well. And that is extremely important to us as administration, and that's one of the reasons why we're putting this motion in front of you today, because we want to tell you what we're doing, we want to tell you how we intend to improve it, and we want to tell you that we are serious on this particular issue. Entwined within that is the delivering the levelling up agenda and to improve the quality of life within prioritised places within Nottinghamshire. And I've already talked to you about how we have identified those areas and intend to improve those issues. We have a leader here who represents some of these areas and who is extremely keen to improve those areas that he is responsible for. And I will be doing my utmost, and our group will be doing our utmost to ensure that we deliver, along with John and Sue and everybody else that is involved within health issues as far as this council is concerned. I implore you to vote for this motion. It is extremely important to us all, not just a few, our side or anybody else's side. It's important to us all. It's important to all our residents, you know. And so let's get behind John and the team, and let's get behind them, and let's improve the lot for the health and well-being of the people of Nottinghamshire. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Payne, I'm led to believe you may have an amendment to this motion. Is that correct? In which case, can you move the motion, and then we will take the speakers have indicated want to speak on the substantive motion after we've sorted out the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I do have an amendment which I could ask Democratic Services to circulate, and I maybe pause for a moment and then carry on speaking, or would you like me to carry on speaking while you're circulating? Okay. Let me first of all say to the Chamber that I don't disagree with anything that has been said by Councillor Dr. John Doddy, who clearly has far more professional expertise in this area than I would ever profess to have. And also, let me just say to the Deputy Leader of the Council that I thought your personal testimony, Bruce, at the start of the discussion was incredibly insightful. And again, don't demur from anything that either of you have said. I rise, Mr. Chairman, to propose a friendly amendment in line with the spirit of Councillor Barney earlier about trying to bring the Chamber together around an issue that, as Councillor Doddy and Councillor Lawton have both said, is incredibly important. And the central point of the friendly amendment is to focus in on the issue of food poverty, food insecurity. You may also like to use that term. I think in actual fact, both the Deputy Leader was concluding in his comments by saying that some people can't afford to or may struggle to fund appropriate nutrition in terms of their diet. And also, clearly, there was a very strong and powerful point made by Councillor Doddy about inequality. I think actually the phrase that you used, Councillor Doddy, was that this is not about life choice, this is about inequality and a structural issue that we need to tackle. Let me start, Mr. Chairman, just by saying this before we have a debate about the amendment and the motion. A heartfelt thank you to every single member of staff at Nottinghamshire County Council for the outstanding work that they have done to try and keep the show on the road in terms of nutrition and tackling food poverty, and in particular child poverty, which was drawn attention to by Dr. Doddy throughout the pandemic, but indeed before the pandemic as well. It is not a Conservative achievement or a Labour achievement or a Liberal Democrat achievement or an independent achievement that this county proudly can boast of having the most food clubs by spring this year in the entirety of England. That is down to the hard work and dedication of the staff who serve us in this county council, and that's where I want to start by thanking them. I thank you to the district councils also, to the civic society partners who have been involved in setting up those food clubs and making sure that healthy food has reached tables of the many families who have needed it throughout the pandemic. So I rise, Mr. Chairman, not to criticise, not to question the tenor or spirit of the motion, not to try and make a political point against the administration or the county council, but simply to try and strengthen this motion. Since 1976, there has been a legal requirement on this country as part of an international covenant to provide adequate food, the word that Councillor Doddy spoke about earlier. But that doesn't happen for far too many families, not only in Nottinghamshire, but around the country. And it doesn't happen because there isn't enough food in this country. We're a green county, aren't we? We have outstanding farmers throughout this county who do an absolutely remarkable job of providing not only a wide range of choice in terms of food, but on historical standards, cheap food in this country as well that is both healthy and nutritious. I look to Councillor Jackson, there are other people in the chamber who contribute to that important part of the economy in Nottinghamshire. And let me just also put on record my thanks to the farmers in Nottinghamshire and to the supermarkets, who I think also have played a critical role here. So the issue is not that we don't have enough food. The issue for those people who face food poverty is that often they don't have enough money. And that might be food hunger for children who are going to school. It might be the single parent who doesn't feed the children, doesn't feed themselves because they need to feed the children. It might be the person who has such a chaotic life that they don't have time to go to the supermarket and buy fresh food. It might be, Mr. Chairman, the million people who live in this country who live in what are called food deserts, where actually they don't even have access to decent, nutritious, healthy food. Quite hard to imagine, given that it's an easy stroll down to the supermarket for many of us, or a drive out in our cars, or a trip on the bus. But that exists in our own country, one of the richest countries in the world. Even before COVID, Mr. Chairman, there were an estimated over 8 million people in the UK who had trouble just simply putting food on their table. A shocking statistic that should be a clarion call to all of us in this chamber, whatever our political stripe or none, to do something about. So my amendment calls for 2 or 3 simple practical things that I think are in the gift of this chamber. Allow me to elucidate on them. It includes the issue about food poverty in the motion. It asks for the council to appoint somebody to lead this work on food poverty, on nutrition, which is the central point of the original motion, as a champion. And if I may just say so practically, if people are sat there thinking, well, you know, who is going to be this champion? What role is that going to take on? Perfectly happy for that to just be a cabinet member or a committee chairman. The deputy leader or councillor, Dr. John Doddy, leading on that piece of work as an appointed person to drive change in this area would be perfectly fine by me. It calls on the county council to set up a food partnership. And I'm not asking for millions of pounds to be spent on this. I'm asking us simply to look over the border to the Good Food Partnership in Nottingham, where the universities are involved, where the city council are involved, where the civic society are involved, where Sainsbury's and the cooperative are involved, where local allotments are involved in trying to get healthy food onto the tables of those people in all of our wards and divisions who desperately need it. It may be that the county council just decides to join that food partnership and doesn't actually look to set up a brand new partnership itself. And I already think in Councillor Tracy Taylor's area, there are staff who are starting to branch out into some of these areas in terms of some of the work that we've done with the food clubs that I've just referenced. One just opened yesterday in my own county division in Killisip. And the final thing, Mr. Chairman, that my amendment calls for is for us to do something as a county council over and above the outstanding work that members of staff are already doing to increase the take-up of the Healthy Start vouchers that the NHS administers, but that we have a statutory responsibility, as Councillor Doddy said, to promote. 62% take-up of the Healthy Start vouchers in this county. 3,890 pregnant women or women who have children under the age of 4 years are entitled to those vouchers that are total just over £4 to buy fresh milk, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit from places like the ones that I've just described earlier as supermarkets. And there's only a 62% take-up in the county. Just to put that in pounds and pennies for people in this room, £10,276.50 every single week in this county, not from our budget, from an allocated budget by the government, goes unclaimed. Let me put it another way. 500,000, £500,000 worth of healthy food, the central part of the motion that Councillor Doddy brings here today, isn't reaching the tables of people who are eligible and entitled to have that food put on their table and supported. The cooperative and the Sainsbury's added a £1 value onto the £4 vouchers throughout the pandemic, and credit to the government. The Prime Minister then decided he was going to consolidate that into the scheme, and they've now been uprated, the vouchers, to £4.80. I just finish on this startling statistic, and it draws in line with what Councillor Dudley said. A baby born to a mother in the most deprived decile is nearly twice as likely to have a low birth rate as a baby born to a mother in the least deprived decile. Medical science also proves that babies born in those areas that are the most deprived are often born with conditions that will then deteriorate in terms of asthma, heart disease, clogged arteries, other associated issues that Councillor Doddy has drawn attention to. The cooperative group and the cooperative party are doing outstanding work in this area. They are not the only people doing outstanding work in this area, but they deserve praise. But there are also other people, including our own staff and councillors across this chamber, who deserve praise as well. So I move the amendment, Mr. Chairman, in good spirit, to strengthen what is a fantastic motion that both the Deputy Leader and Councillor Doddy should be commended for bringing here today. And I hope that it is pragmatic, straightforward and simple, and will build on the outstanding work that this County Council is already doing to tackle what is a crying shame that there are families in this country who still cannot put decent food on the table. And may I just say, it would be outstanding, wouldn't it, if we turn the dial on this and move from being the 9th most deprived county in the country to being the county that is not only green, with a proud history and heritage of farming and agriculture, but that one that never, ever again has a family that cannot put nutritious food on the table. And if that isn't something that we can all come around the table to, whatever party and non-party today, then I don't know what the point in us being here is. I move the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Welsh, you are seconding the motion, I understand. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
Reserve my right to speak, Chair.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Yeah.
Can I ask to just have a short recess so I can discuss the amendment with Councillor Doddy? Is that okay? Thank you.
So, members, we'll adjourn for 10 minutes while the amendment is considered.
think initially we were a little bit anxious ourselves about going to panel. It sounded quite scary, but it wasn't at all. It was just a really friendly chit chat with a group of people around a table. It was more of a celebration really of us being there and of us, you know, wanting to become foster carers. The County Council offer a fair rate of pay, so we get paid dependent on our level of experience. So after you've done it for a while, then your level of pay will go up based on your experience and level of training that you've done. We've also got a network hub, which is a foster carer support group, and it's just an informal get-together. We feel so valued as a foster carer for Nottinghamshire County Council. Everyone's so caring and wants what's best for you as a family. The matching process is really careful, so they listen to our needs, and you know, they would never think of placing a child that wouldn't fit in our environment. As a foster family, we try and just make it everyday normal life, try and bring some stability and love to that child that's staying with us, and give them experiences that perhaps they've not experienced before. We love going out on day trips together, and for example today we've come pony trekking. Nottinghamshire's a great place to foster because we've got so much on our doorstep. There's so much that we can do. I feel really lucky that we're able to foster here.
The Send Local Offer is a website containing information and support for children and young people aged 0 to 25 within the Nottinghamshire area who have special educational needs or disabilities.
The Local Offer is like a hub of all information, everything put together on one page. It's really useful for special educational needs, and it's Nottinghamshire and surrounding counties, so even if you're bordering on a county you can still find useful information.
I use the website to look for things to do with my hobbies, such as performing arts activities and areas where I can voice my opinion.
You can find lots of useful information on the youth service for young people. For example, health, education, finding a job and hobbies and interests.
There's absolutely loads of information. There's health, education, social care, clubs, transport. It's all there.
You might want to use the Local Offer to see how you can get some extra support for your child at school, apply for a short break, or just simply see what clubs or activities are available in the local area. Even if you don't know what you're looking for, it's worth just having a look on there because there's so much information available.
We've used the Local Offer quite a lot over the years. It's been really useful for the girls.
When we needed to apply for an educational healthcare plan for our son, we went online and looked at the Local Offer, so we understood the process from start to finish and what steps we needed to take.
If you are a young person with special educational needs or disabilities living in Nottinghamshire, I would say give the young people zone a try.
There is lots of information and you can get involved by sending an article, a blog or a vlog.
I think the local offer is a really useful resource for parents and carers living within Nottinghamshire. It's a comprehensive hub of information, and I found out about support and services that I wouldn't have otherwise known about.
Yeah. Thank you, members. Could we settle down? Thank you. Councillor Doddy, do you accept the amendment to the motion?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. After much deliberation and cross-party understanding between all of us that the people of Nottinghamshire are the most important of all, not any one of us. It has been noted that with a change just where it says a food justice champion, that will change to a healthy food champion. And with that one subtle change, it becomes a motion proposed by myself and Councillor Payne and seconded by Councillor Lawton and Michelle. Not you again. Michelle Welsh. Yes, in the spirit of that, we accepted the amendment. Thank you.
Right, in which case then I'll move to the list of those who indicated they wish to speak originally, and we start off with Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chairman, fellow councillors. An excellent motion. Obviously, we've got motion 4, which we probably won't be coming up to today, so there would be some things I could actually say as to the reasons why we're in this situation. But we are where we are. We've got to do something about it. I read something the other day which absolutely shocked me. In Britain, in 2022, it was 2021 when I read it, the return of some diseases. 2 of them, 1 scurvy and 2 rickets. 2 diseases which are the result of poor nutrition. And for that reason alone, I think as a county and as a country, we have to say, whoa, what on earth's happening? What can we do about it, given the resources that we've got? Because we're not going to get any more resources, let's face it. We need to now think, what can we do differently? Because doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results never happens. We've got to do something differently. And that is why it's so important that me standing here as a vision of health and well-being would say that we have got to do something for younger people. I can sort myself out of. I could lose weight tomorrow if I wanted to, and I will do. Oh yeah, I did. I lost 6 stone about 4 years ago in one sitting. You want to know how?
I see a sponsored slim coming on for the chairman's charity.
But we've got to do something. This is a good motion. I think it should be completely cross-party, with cross-party cooperation to deliver this, because it's too important not to do it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Wilmot.
Right, thank you, Chairman. I thank Councillor Doddy and Councillor Lawton for bringing this issue to our attention. It is one of the most important issues. Health for our residents is absolutely essential. It's 31 years ago when I first stood up in council, not this council, but a saying that obesity was a serious problem. And it's still the same now as it was 31 years ago. There's been no change because there isn't anyone got hold of the problem and developed a project to sort it out. I know that it's very difficult because families do not want to be told what to do. And of course, the price of goods is again a problem because cheap food is the first thought for most families, especially if they haven't got the resources to pay for anything more. But actually, you don't have to spend lots and lots of money on good food. Vegetables and so forth, they're quite as cheap as some of the other foods. But it needs to be instilled on our residents, you know, the serious problems that it is. Can I say the need to encourage healthy eating is absolutely essential, absolutely essential. And if we are to improve the diets of our people and improve the health and well-being of all residents in Nottinghamshire, it should all start with families at an early age. Early intervention is one thing that I have spoken about over 30 odd years. Early intervention, and it's been ignored to a certain extent. I mean, yes, we've played at it. Councils have played at it. The NHS have played at it. The CCGs have played at it. And of course, the NHS and even local government association. I did go down there and talk about it as well some years ago. And they said at the time, yes, we're going to help. We're going to try and help. But nothing's been done. But it really is a very, very serious problem. And as I say, early intervention is the name of the game. It is the name of the game. School education on this issue is essential, absolutely essential. Can I say, children's centres, infant schools and nurseries, they're all areas where we need to get into and educate the families into eating the right types of food. And a lot of them think, yeah, all food, we can't afford that. It's, you know, we've got to have egg and chips and this, that, the other. You know, they don't cost very much. But it's wrong. There are alternatives, cheaper alternatives that are really good, solid food. And we all have to take the opportunity to get involved in that. That is the main thing. All of us, as a whole council, we've got to get involved in this. Party politics took it out over that balcony at the present time, because this is an issue that we all should be involved in. We've got residents out there. You can see them. I see them when I go into the houses, and I think to myself, oh dear, you know, that family needs a little bit of education on the types of food to eat. And I just, you know, I just get overcome with the situation. And it's the lifestyles means whether a person's going to die at 60 or 80 or more. It's that serious. It could be 20 odd years if you're not getting the right types of food. It can be as long, as big as that problem. What a difference it would see. We would see in the NHS. That's your surgeries, the dentists, the hospitals. They wouldn't be overrun like they are at the moment if people lived on a balanced diet. There's no doubt about that. Oh, thank you. And as I say, so many illnesses, and the NHS would improve immensely with the hospitals. Wouldn't be so overrun. Chairman, the Health and Safety Board has to see nutrition developed as a key component in the health and safety strategy. And part of the strategy would be to involve families on this extremely important issue. You know, Mr. Chairman, there's some very important advertising took place not so long ago, all about essential 5 a day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise to wholeheartedly support the motion as the amended one being accepted. I just want to throw in a couple of words of caution. I'm not trying to dampen the impact, but what I do believe is we have to be very careful that it just doesn't become an argument about that we have to focus wholly on the healthy longevity part of this, the motion and its ambitions, not on things like body image. I'm a little concerned that if the wrong message gets out there, we could impact on people's mental health, and we look at anorexia, bulimia, all those kind of things, if the message doesn't get out in the right way. But get that message out there, absolutely support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carey. Councillor Camilleri.
Yes, thank you. It's very interesting that when I can't remember who said it now, called me an ectomorph. Obviously, that means I'm of normal size and normal thing, but they've picked me out as being different, and that actually tells you what the world is like. If you're thin, and I'm very lucky to be like this, I think. I don't know why, but going back to my childhood, which is a long time ago, I keep going back to my childhood. It's boring. But going back to my childhood at school in a very deprived area. Not much food, bread and dripping, packets of crisps, bread and condensed milk, and everybody have tried that. But we went to school, we had a school dinner, and in our class, perhaps, there were 1 or 2 kids overweight. I'm talking about 1 or 2 kids. And they normally, being kids are cruel, they got picked on. But nowadays, it's different. If somebody goes to school and they're thin and they're fit and healthy, they're liable to get picked on. Our society now seems to accept people being overweight. We've been joking about it now. Who's going to have a biscuit? What are you going to do? That's it. And I disagree a little bit what I'm saying about poor people. Well, we were poor, desperately poor, poorer than you'll ever know, because you don't come from that town. We were poor. We had no food, bread and dripping, doing bread and jam for a bit of a treat, all like that. No money. But my parents looked after me. It's about parental responsibility, a lot of this. It's not just about that. I'll just give for an instance. You can't imagine me being a cook, can you? Not really. I'm not the cook-looking type of person. But my wife, bless her, is doing a part-time job, and I get home being semi-retired. So I'm one of those, I'm a house person. So I decide I'll cook her a meal. So I went out and being very careful with money, that means I'm tight. I went into Lidl and I thought, I'll do a treat. And I've got we don't eat meat in our house. So there are some vegetarian meatballs. And I've got 8 left. I thought, I know what I'll do. So I went into, and these meatballs, it's no joke. These cost about £2. And I went into there and I bought a bag of casserole vegetables. It cost 90p, I think. So I went home, very proud of this, cooked the casserole, put the meatballs in, and fed my wife, and it was brilliant. And it was a healthy meal. It cost £2. Now, I accept that what it does come down to, it's poor education. Poor education. Mansfield, Ashfield has suffered from poor education through your time when you were in charge. You let us down terribly. You really did. You really did. You had I'm not being controversial, but you had every opportunity in your 30 years running this to sort the education out. Mansfield was the lowest of the low. And now it's just starting to pick up. Educate the kids. Feed them at school. School dinners were great because you had a balanced meal, and that's it. But what I'm saying, it's not, I wrote down here, it's not poor nutrition, it's too much nutrition. They're eating too much of the wrong food. We had wrong food. We did. You can remember that? You had wrong food, all that. But we didn't have loads of it. We were out playing in the parks. It was a safer place. So perhaps we want more parks. But it's down to the parents. And I've not heard that said. In your I forgot your name now. Mike, is it Michael? Payne, yeah. Councillor Payne, sorry. I didn't hear you talk about parental responsibility once. Not once did you say that. Whether or not that's a socialist thing, I don't know. But you didn't talk about parental responsibility means everything. And they should look after their own children. It's their responsibility. They have the children, they should look after them. And that's me done.
Michael, did you have a point of order?
Just a very brief point of explanation. Councillor Camilleri, I don't seek to demur from anything you've just said. I just politely make one request. Don't you ever make an aspersion about my background ever again and where I come from. You said poorer than you'll ever know. You couldn't be further from the truth. And I found what you said deeply offensive and deeply upsetting. You've no idea about my background and you couldn't have been wider of the mark. And I agree with everything you said. And you have every right to make your point, but don't ever again cast an aspersion about me and my background again.
I apologise for that. I'm terribly sorry. Thank you.
Councillor Moxon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this motion today. I start off very quickly saying that Councillor Doddy mentioned about Mansfield, and apparently I'm joining in on trying to get herd immunity of some kind. So, so thanks for that.
You're doing very well.
Yes, I know, absolutely. Yeah. So hopefully I've got herd immunity by now. I'm there. I'm okay. I think it's now accepted with things like mental health is a key part of an overall of a person's overall health and well-being, and yet a few years ago it wasn't. It was sort of ignored completely, and going back even further, something like smoking was something that was perfectly accepted, and then it became to a point where people realise it's actually very dangerous for a person's health, and so sort of the times change, and I think nutrition is probably the next thing. It's the next thing that's going to come along, where people are going to have to realise that it is very serious for a person's health, and that obviously needs addressing, and this motion goes towards addressing that. My own experience at work, I shared this with Dr. Doddy earlier. So when I first started at the company I work for now, we had a tuck shop, which was conveniently placed next to my desk. So I started there at 8 stone wet through, and then a few trips to the tuck shop later. But it's things like we actually took the tuck shop away. So we stopped it, and there was a bit of pushback from some of the staff that we'd taken it away, but we used to sell cheap chocolate bars and cheap fizzy drinks. That was all taken away. The company then provided free fruit to all the staff. So, instead of there being chocolate bars for 50p, there's now free bananas, apples, oranges, pears, etc. And so, there also we encourage staff to have healthier lunches, and that's provided for some of the staff as well. On occasions, we have healthy lunches made for us. It hasn't affected me very well, as you can tell. But I'll come on to COVID's had an impact on this as well. So I thought back to like my time of when COVID first started, and I sat at home, and so the healthy eating went out the window. I found myself working all hours of the day, shut off in a little room, didn't do any exercise, would just eat fast food, whatever's most convenient to do. I haven't got the time or patience that clearly Councillor Camilleri's got to be cooking. I just stick something in the microwave and eat it. And that's bad, quite frankly. So I welcome this motion. I hope the council will all support it today. And I also hope that the council will work with local businesses to encourage them to encourage their employees to get healthy and keep the keys to the tuck shop away from me. Thank you very much.
Six. Colleagues, I have 6 more speakers who have indicated. 7, 8 now. We will need to leave approximately 15 minutes for summing up. So if you don't get called by 5:15, then the chances of you being called to speak are 0 to 0. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. I have wrote a speech which I'm not going to read at all, mainly because Councillor Lawton and Councillor Doddy and Councillor Michael Payne actually capitalised everything really that I wanted to say. So what I will say is actually the very reason that I am stood here today and I stood for election is actually based around the whole food poverty scenario. In my previous job, I visited a food bank, actually not in the ward that I live in or I sit in, but actually it's in Councillor Creamer's ward in Colton. And while I was there, a young mother walked in with 2 very young boys, 1 4 and 1 5, very closely aged. And when they walked in, the staff knew them by their first names, and they knew at this food bank there's also a little table that's set up with cereal, so they can choose a cereal. And there's what they called the toast lady that would come out and say, do you want spaghetti hoops or beans on your toast this morning? And when I first saw it, I thought, how amazing that those kids just come in here really confident. They were impeccably behaved. They were so, so polite. It was really lovely to see. And then something changed inside me, in the sense that the reason that these children knew where to get the cereal from and how they knew that that particular lady was the lady that made the toast was because they went to that food bank so often. And they were living in a constant cycle of not having enough money every single end of every single month that the mother wasn't able to feed the children. I accept what people say with regards to parental responsibility in one sense. However, before I came and said I was going to speak this motion today, I spoke to a good friend of mine who runs a local food bank. And I asked her what some of the challenges are for her as a food bank. And actually, they get a lot of donations. People are really, especially in Gedling, really good at making those donations. But what she also said is about supermarket prices going in. So, for example, into the food market, they don't have enough beans, which is not usually the case. You usually have far too many beans. They will go to the supermarket and they will buy their own beans or their own pasta. So, this time last year, the cheapest pasta in the supermarket was 29p for 500 grams. Now it's 70p. That's a 141% increase. I could list them all where the increase of food has actually gone up, and that includes the healthy food as well. So I won't go on anymore about my ideology of why I think it exists or it doesn't exist. I'm just really proud that Nottinghamshire County Council today is going to support this motion, because actually I think we have a very real opportunity to make the difference in many children's lives. But I will end by saying that it's very often for those children, which I saw at that Carlton Food Bank and that I see when I go and visit the Arnold Food Bank, it's not a case of fruit or not. It's not a case of vegetables or not. It's a case of food or not. And that's the bit that we've really got to tackle and got to get to grips with. And if that means that we have to work cross-party on that, then I welcome that, because it's heartbreaking. And I don't want to see it in Gedling, and I don't want to see it across the rest of Nottinghamshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Councillor Pole.
Okay, thank you, and I support this amended motion, and thank you, Michelle. That was a very good, very good speech there. Made some really brilliant points and from personal experience. Please, can we not patronise or blame people who live in less well-off families or live in poverty? I thought what Councillor Camilleri said was appalling. If you've no money because your job or jobs, many people kind of on low incomes have several jobs to make ends meet or not. The choices you make are very limited. So come on, let's be fair. And this is why I think the amendment was so good. We need to tackle the inequality. We don't need to blame poorer people. Thank you.
Councillor Gowland.
Sorry. Thank you. I want to echo as just said, really. Councillor Camilleri, at the beginning, the mover and seconder of this motion accepted the link between deprivation and bad nutrition. I'm not sure what you're suggesting there. We understand the changes to universal credit, the changes to national insurance. These things all impact. So we can't just be blaming people for the situation they find themselves in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John O'Lee.
Chairman, thank you. I'm going to be very, very quick. I've got two young children. One is 6 and one is 8. Hazel and David. I love them to bits. And luckily, they have never, ever needed or wanted for anything. We're very privileged and very lucky. I originally come from Bolton in Greater Manchester. When I was a child, that wasn't always the case. I fully support this amendment. I'm really privileged that we're working cross-party to get this done. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Helen Ann Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I rise in support of this motion today. As some people on this side will know, I'm probably the most unhealthiest eater of our entire group. And a big portion of that is, as Councillor Payne said, it's convenience. When I step out my house on my high street in Stanton Hill, we've got one shop that sells fresh fruit and veg. There's five places selling fast food. And it's so easy now that when we have meetings that finish late at the council, we had one that finished 11:30 at night the other week, it's a lot easier to just get on Just Eat or Deliveroo or one of these apps and have something delivered to your house, rather than finishing a meeting late, going home and cooking for half an hour. It's about convenience, and there's a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of people in my area that work 2 jobs because they have to make ends meet. So when they get home, they haven't got the time or the energy to cook a proper dinner. So it is that convenience thing, and I don't know how we get round that. But we need to. I know there was a thing a few years ago where we were working with fast food restaurants and takeaways, encouraging them to put healthy options onto their menus. One of these 5 do. The other 4 don't. So I don't know if there's something more we could potentially do where we go back to try and revive that project again, to work with them to try and get them to improve, put healthier choices on the menus as well. Because I genuinely think that a big part of it is people's lack of time, and it's a lot more convenient to eat junk food and fast food. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Henshaw.
Thank you, Councillor Quigley. I don't really have the words in my lexicon to contribute to this debate or follow the oratory of Councillor Doddy and Councillor Payne. And I'd suggest to Councillor Bradley that if he ever wants anybody to shatter a consensus in this room, you can call on my mate over there, Councillor Camarelli, because he certainly knows how to do that. I mean, I've known Andre a long time, since he played football for Cumberland's and I played football for St John's. And I think I were a left back, and I think you were a forward, but you had a mean tackle. And I seem to remember that I were on the receiving end of that sometimes. So, you know, just be careful. Just be careful. I know, it's mad. When you look at this motion, substantive motion, I think there's a lot that we all can contribute to, and we all can support, because it's a fundamental idea that if you aren't educated in relation to food, then you can make unwise choices. Sometimes that's out of choice, like when you come home from a council meeting at 11:30 and you nip into McDonald's. Or if you watch one of your Saturday morning chefs and they're cutting everything up and throwing their vegetarian meatballs into the stew pot. I'm only glad that Andre, you were able to afford meatballs, because we never had meat in our stew. It were always veg, just veg. We couldn't afford meat. But you know, and I misheard you, because I thought when you said you were a cook, I thought you said you were a crook. But you know, that's just because I'm getting on a bit, my hearing's going. But there's one thing that we can actually do to make a difference, because somebody mentioned about staff. You know, in your place of work, you had a vending machine with all these chocolate bars. Well, we've got vending machines around this council, and you look what's in that. I can't see an healthy option in them. So I think that's a place, Councillor Doddy. We can actually, you know, have a look at and change it. You know, I'm all for one of these meat rissoles or fancy chocolate bars. So we go. Anyway, and I'm coming to a close, Chairman. In relation to Andre, you mentioned about us being in control for 30 years or 20 years, right? But I would have brought, you know, I could be unkind and say, well, we had 10 years of Thatcher, then we had 5 years of a coalition, and then we've had 10 years of, well, I don't know who your leader is at the minute, but, you know, one. The only thing is that I know that you lot will get rid of your leader before we do, so there we go. You know, but I don't want to dwell on that. I just want to dwell on the facts of the issue, that people need to learn to eat healthily. Now, you say about education. Now, you may know, or you may not know, I've been involved with an organisation called the Boys Brigade for 50 years. And one of the first things we did on a Monday night, we encourage and teach the kids how to cook. Now, the first time we did it, I had a bag of veg and I threw it on the table. They all stood there as if to say, what's this? They hadn't got a clue. They didn't know what a cabbage or a cauliflower were. Nobody'd ever shown them, nobody at school, nobody at home. So then we said, well, you know, this is fresh veg. It'll do you good if you eat it. Well, he said, I'd rather have a McDonald's. You know, but if you catch kids early and give them some encouragement, then that's a brilliant thing to do. So I would just hope, Chair, that everybody in this room supports this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm afraid the last two speakers won't have the chance to speak because our friend has gone on rather longer than I anticipated. But Councillor Doddy, if you would like to sum up, and then we'll move to the vote.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's wonderful to feel or to finish on such heartfelt cross-party cooperation, which truly shows us in the best light that we can possibly be, working for each and every one of our residents. We have firmly declared the nutritional emergency. We have firmly declared to try and end food poverty, and we have said that nutrition is not something amazing, it's just an adequate and well-balanced diet, which is something that we should be committed to do. This is equally well give the Health and Wellbeing Board the added momentum to drive the joint strategic needs assessments through Director Gribben to declare the needs of our communities and each and individual communities, to drive those through the integrated care service. And this is the most important thing that we're ever going to do, is to drive the integrated care service, to lead the integrated care service, to be the leaders of the integrated care partnership, to take the money into the community and drive the preventative agenda. Prevention, that is the key. It's the only way we're ever going to survive. Now, thanks very much for all the contributions that have occurred throughout the afternoon. Bruce introduced the concept of endomorphs and ectomorphs. I do remember that little morph guy that used to be on the TV. Just about as much as I can remember, Bruce. But he did bring up the concept of place-based interventions, and this comes back to where the fish and chip shops and everything else are. The interventions are not going to be over the whole of Nottinghamshire. They have to be through the Health and Wellbeing Board, through the Integrated Care Partnership, for the first time ever, place-based. Councillor Payne, once again, fantastically put forward the importance of tackling food poverty, and therefore that is obviously top and foremost of what we want to do. Councillor Carr, he said he would lose 5 stone, and just at that moment I thought I saw a pig flying past me. Sorry, 6 stone. 6 stone. He was actually challenged by Councillor Girling, who said he could lose 6 stone. And that brings me on neatly to Eric Kerry's suggestion that we could end up with 2 anorexics here if we're not careful. Councillor Wilmot, quite happily, there's no great danger of it, to be honest. Now, let's be fair. Councillor Wilmot talked about 31 years and nothing's changed. Well, I'll challenge him on that. It's all got worse. It's as simple as that. It's got worse. Now, in terms of Councillor Kerry, we've mentioned eating disorders, which are quite important. Councillor Camilleri brought some heat into debate. We had talk about camels earlier on and creating people to take the hump. So Councillor Camilleri is well named. That's what a diet of bread and dripping does for you. Councillor Moxon talked very importantly about the fact that employers need to see food as part of the well-being of their employees. A healthy employee is a productive employee, and that is part of the Sustainable Food Shire, that any organisation that signs up has to have a leader. They have to make partnership organisations, and they have to deal with the food environment in which their employees are in. And as we drive that through, and it's on the next Health and Wellbeing Board, is about making Nottingham a food healthy shire. You're all very welcome. Tickets are going fast. So sign up now is all I can say to you. So Councillor Moxon, absolutely right to get rid of that tuck shop. Yes, we're not sure where it's gone, but it's gone somewhere. He's brought it home with him. Councillor Welsh, absolutely quite right in saying that food poverty is not a lifestyle choice. Nobody chooses to live in poverty. Nobody chooses hunger. People eat what they can afford to eat. So you're absolutely right there. And as Councillor Fole said, it's not a blame game. It's a game about helping people. So I think in order to bring it to a summary, I think that this has been the most enlightening, fascinating, heartwarming debate that I've heard in an awful long time. There are only one benefactors. There are only one people who are going to get the best out of that, and that's each and every single one of our residents. Support the motion, and I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councillor Doddy, for your eloquent summing up as ever. Can we move to the vote then, please? All those in favour? That is clearly unanimous, and the motion is carried. Can I point out that the two motions that are remaining on the book will carry over to the March meeting, because the February meeting is budget only. So those motions will carry over to March. Thank you all for your patience, and I wish you all a safe journey home.